Did she say what kind of animal it was that attacked her?
So yeah, they're saying it's some type of animal attack. Statistically, there's been more animal attacks, mysterious deaths, people gone missing.
In other news, local authorities remain perplexed by the animal attacks.
What attacked you in the woods?
An animal. What else could it have been?
Welcome to It Was an Animal Attack, home of the supernatural drama series. I'm Sandile.
And I'm Fadzai.
And ladies, gentlemen, everyone between and outside, we are closing out on our dear, beloved Caroline Forbes going into her last 2 seasons on the Vampire Diaries.
Woo! Vampire Barbie, Care Bear.
Not Vampire Barbie. It's true. So, I don't know, is there anything to say following the previous session? It just went up. It's doing quite well, as to be expected. People like Caroline.
Nothing that I can think of.
Yeah? Okay, well then, let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. Season 7... You'll remember Elena's taking a little bit of beauty sleep. So that is really the biggest thing that's happened in the finale of the prior season. Just a really long beauty sleep, and honestly need. So everyone has started keeping diaries for when she wakes up. Because of course, our show is called Vampire Diaries. We do need some vampires keeping diaries.
Did they even keep that till the end of the season? Because I always forget that that's a thing, and I feel like it's not my fault, it's theirs.
Truly the only one who does it is Caroline, which is, I mean, that kind of tracks. We get, I think, 3 or 4 diary entries from Caroline over these 2 seasons, which honestly might be more than Elena at that point.
Listen, Elena found out she was adopted, her boyfriend was a vampire, her bestie was a witch. She stopped having time to journal.
She can't keep up with that shit. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of focus. Personally, I've never been able to do it. That ADHD go wild. But, you know, I get it.
I did it for a few months in 2017.
Ooh.
I sometimes go back and read, and I'm like, you were insane, but it's cute.
For me, that's finding old writing, I guess, sort of works like a diary of my childhood. Just being like, wild what you found interesting in a story at 12 years old. Wild what you thought
Oh no, not the
cool and
12-year-old
protagonist
writing.
characters. But Caroline's diary serves to set up what everyone's status quo is for this new season. A lot like she did last season with her voicemails to Stefan. She just like describes what everyone's situation is. In it, she talks about missing her mum and that she hasn't fully processed her passing, which, you know, it's only been... God, how long would it be at this point since Liz passed away?
When in season 6 did she pass away?
Like episode 14? Maybe?
Oof, the passage of time in this show, I'm not even sure. Because I'm not even sure how much time is between the end of 6 and the start of 7.
That's true. Because you can't even gauge by what's happening in their lives, because nobody really goes to college anymore. So that's not even a marker. They fully stopped pretending these characters are like in their early 20s or like just out of their teens.
And then there's like the time warpy stuff that's happening as well.
There is, in fact, yes, a 3-year time jump to consider this season. Oh, we're here, people. We're here. So we'll assume like half a year has passed by. She's sitting in a bench in like the middle of town as she's writing. It's a sunny day, you know. And then Stefan comes by. You'll remember at the end of last season, Stefan had asserted that he is a patient guy and he's willing to wait as long as Caroline needs to deal with everything before feeling she's ready to pursue a relationship with him. And so when he comes by, they talk about anything except for the obvious. And then Stefan's like, okay, clearly I've made things weird by confessing my true feelings, because things are a bit awkward, but it's a cute kind of awkward. Unlike last season where there was a lot of like uncomfortable awkward, ooh, she kind of hates him. They clearly are far removed from then. Ultimately, they decide that Caroline's gonna focus on herself and on her healing process, and in the meantime, they're friends, as they've always been. This is also the Lily and the Heretics arc, this first like 7 or 8 episodes. So of course this is when Caroline, Stefan and Matt make a bomb to blow up all the heretics.
That's the thing that happens.
because they slaughtered these 2 high schoolers who, to be unfair, did a hit and run in Valerie. So there's a lot that happens in like the first 20 minutes of this episode.
Valerie feels a lot more evil at the start of the story.
Oh yeah, not evil per se, not more or less than the others. She's just sort of like,
Yeah, not like any
What's
more
the
than the
word?
heretics. The other, I just mean like she feels more
Sinister.
evil, more sinister and evil than she will end up feeling as the season progresses.
right, which, you know, a lot of characters in this show have that kind of thing going on. So yeah, Caroline volunteers to distract the heretics while Matt plants the bomb, and she gets trapped in this lesbian mean girl situation with Nora and Mary Louise, which I think is so fun.
The anxiety that courses through me every time I watch that scene.
Tell my girlfriend she looks pretty.
And she has to pretend to be compelled. I was like,
Because
she needs to leave.
Matt is already arming the bomb. The bomb fails, of course, because they're heretics. And then they retaliate by slaughtering all the cops in Mystic Falls, which ACAB. And then the Mystic Falls gang decides to call an armistice by evacuating the whole town and leaving it to Lily and the heretics. And then, like, animosity's done. We move forward with our lives.
Which honestly, I don't know why you'd want to stay in an empty town. Feels kind of boring. It's just that Lily is now obsessed with living in the Salvatore home, which wasn't even her home.
Yeah.
We've discussed it in the Lily episode.
Do go back to the Lily episode, but yeah, it is a point of pride to be like, and now I can actually make a life here now that I'm free of my abusive asshole husband and I have like children to care for.
Now that I'm free of my first abusive asshole husband.
Right. Now to bring my second abusive asshole husband back to life. Oh, Lily, I love you dearly. So yeah, Stefan and Caroline towards the end are covering up the furniture in her home. They're like, you know, discussing whether or not they've made the right decision, because it's a really insane thing they do to evacuate all of Mystic Falls, even though it does effectively work in like, well, you know, the peace breaks eventually, but that's for external reasons we'll get to. Caroline tells Stefan that she thought there'd be a point that she hits where she finally moves on from her grief over her mother. But she's like, my mom is always going to be my mom, and I'm always going to miss her. Stefan's like, well, yeah, girl. You can't wait for the good parts in life to come along. All you can do is forgive yourself for finding happiness during the bad. And that's when Caroline tells him that she is happy, despite all that's going on. When she's with Stefan, she feels good. And then she goes over and kisses him, which is a sort of affirmation of like, okay, I do want to pursue this. I'm not going to wait for some arbitrary point for things to improve, which I think is lovely. I think a lot of people assume that to get into a relationship, you need to be as a person and in your life, like at this perfect level. Like you have to be perfectly well adjusted and you have to be perfectly emotionally intelligent. And only then do you deserve the partnership and the love that comes with a relationship. And I, you know, it's nice to push against that ideal.
Yes. On the other hand, though, I do
Uh-huh.
I do sometimes look a bit funny at the other side of that coin. People who think the purpose of getting into a relationship is to be fixed. Within this show, we all know which ship that is. But
You know what? I have challenged myself in my notes to just be like, you know what? And you feel no obligation to abide to this, but I'm going to lay off the other Mr. Salvatore and his business this episode, because, you know, I want to be peaceful today. We've got enough trouble to get through this
we can
season.
try and be like Whoopi Goldberg on The View, who refuses to mention Donald Trump by name.
Precisely. I think that's what we're going to do. If you hear a sudden blank in my speaking, just know what word is supposed to be there.
She always says, you know who. She's been doing it since 2016.
That's funny. As you'll recall from the Enzo episode, for those of you who cared about the Enzo episode, this episode ends with him selling Caroline over to the heretics after the one irrelevant heretic Malcolm is killed. So,
Oh yeah, wasn't he like taking her mother's plaque off the bench And it was like,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, he's doing something nice. And then immediately it's like, no, he's spying for the other side or whatever.
Yeah, and it's in an episode where Caroline tells him, hey, you've kind of been pulling this leopardess act for 2.5 years now, and I'm kind of sick of it. Like, what do you want here, and whose side are you on? The implication with this scene at the end is like, okay, Enzo's finally deciding to lock up with your protagonists, and then boom, betrayal. As though it's new to anything Enzo has ever
It's like,
done.
I picked a side, it wasn't yours. And it's like, oh,
It's like, okay.
shocker, we lost Enzo. Whatever will we do?
What a huge loss. Shame, this is the season where Enzo turns around after being rewritten entirely, so he's on the way to better things.
Because of the Time War.
Because of the Time Warp. Yeah, we roll into Caroline kidnapped and tortured, which I guess the joke I've written here is like a Naked and Afraid joke.
What?
Kidnapped and
Oh,
tortured. Are you familiar with Naked and Afraid?
I am familiar with it because I think of an SNL skit that referenced it.
Yeah, fair enough. So this is the TV show Kidnapped and Tortured.
And honestly, I think it's been a while for her.
It's been a while. Season 6 is easy on her, surprisingly. Well, I mean, I guess her mom dies of cancer, so the emotional torture might make up for that, but no, she's not really physically put through anything. Because I think I mentioned it before about season 6 is that like a lot of characters are largely uninvolved in the main plot, so she doesn't really get a chance. As we said, this is the season of the time jump, so there is a flash forward early in the season of Caroline working as a news producer. I did confirm she is the producer. I had thought she was, because she wanted to go into journalism, I assumed she would have been a caster, and then I was like,
Oh.
she's producing her own content? So it's no, she just produces the news, which I thought was interesting.
Where is the money coming from for this? Because earlier you said you said they've given up pretending that these people are in their early 20s and attending school, and I'm like, yeah, but now how are they supporting themselves financially? I guess all their parents are
Trust
deceased, so they've inherited like
Right, like a
whatever money
wealth,
was-
the old money of this town. They've inherited it.
gosh.
There's never a single person outside Matt who, still even now, it's like, he needs to work as a cop because he needs money. Like, yes, of course, he wants to protect the town, but also that is a salary. Everyone else doesn't have a job.
Even Jeremy is off screen being a vampire hunter and pretending to go to art school, and it's like,
Right.
how is he supporting himself?
You know they're sending him money from that Gilbert fund. Like, Rick is loading him a monthly stipend all the time as he sends leads for him to chase down. Jeremy's fine.
Yeah, I guess he's getting it from John and Giuseppe's what would you call
Imagine.
them, estates. But yeah, so Caroline is the producer, so she doesn't actually like.
She doesn't sit behind the desk. No, it's two other people sitting
Okay.
behind the desk, and she's standing behind the camera with a little earpiece on, which I think is a good
Well,
look
that's
for her.
disappointing because I was gonna say, oh, the through line from Career Day with Logan Fell, and
Right, but
in
that's
season
what I'm
one.
saying. I was like, I find it interesting that, like, because you would think she would be front and center in front of the camera, but it seems in this like time jump, because there's a lot about this season that really shows how Caroline has grown even beyond the last season we just got, because our whole life changes this season, right? So it's like Caroline as a news producer versus Caroline as a newscaster shows this difference in personality and in priorities in her life, and I think that's interesting.
I guess yeah, that she's like, I don't need to be the face of the brand.
You know?
Because she was head cheerleader at one point, but she was also always organizing the Miss Mystic stuff and the
Right.
town cleanup stuff and all the group get-togethers and Thanksgivings and Christmases and whatnot.
It's almost a shift away from like the wants and the desires of the things she always pursues, and more her playing to her strengths, which is her organization and her planning, like that sort of thing. It's almost as like with age, she's come to realize where she can be better suited, and she's thriving. And I find that really cool. She's in this pantsuit, and again, her hair is tied up in this like updo, and she's got the earpiece, just like working woman. I really like it.
Look at you, Caroline. Elena could never. I mean,
She
she
could
had to be asleep. She had to be asleep for you to accomplish this, but it's fine. You're still. Elena's still got 6 years of med school that she's gonna need to do when she wakes up.
Honestly, you're leagues ahead, girl, and you never have to worry about that again. In this flash forward, she has this assistant whose name I forget, but he's this anxious little blonde man. I do like him. He brings her a message from her fiance about returning to Mystic Falls, which she's distressed by because she's like, he knows we can't go back there. And that's kind of where they leave it.
And then it's like, Stefan's leaving her a message? They're engaged? Ooh.
I'm gonna be crying a lot this season just to prepare you up front.
Oh, no.
But anyway. So back to sort of present day. Caroline again is in the heretic house at this point, and she's mainly being accosted by the lesbians again. And then my favorite heretic, Valerie, comes in. She commiserates a bit with Caroline over how awful Nora and Mary Louise can be. And she tells Caroline that she can help. And she very quickly does the spell on her and then kind of dips as Nora and Mary Louise comes back. And then when Mary Louise grabs Caroline, we see that Valerie's done the spell that makes Caroline's skin burn when they touch her. It doesn't seem to hurt Caroline. It just hurts the person touching her. Later, they'll say, my skin is basically vervain, which I was like, oh, wow. Transmutation? I'm not sure.
Interesting. I'm like, so if someone licked your skin, would they be immune to compulsion for a while? Or if her skin is vervain, is she now immune to original vampire compulsion?
I didn't need that image in my head, first of all, but we're going to move on from that. I think it's not a like chemical transformation. It's more of a metaphysical one.
I see.
In that like touching her gives you the response of like touching vervain. It's not that her skin is actually vervain now. Is my assumption.
I love when we discuss the science of the supernatural happenings in this world.
Yeah, anytime someone is like, don't think about it too much, it's magic. It's like, no, I always want to think about it. I want to like get the fine-tuned minutia because it's exciting to consider.
Yeah, it's fun to like sort of examine these things at the microscopic, subatomic level, like what's going on here physically.
At the level of quarks and intricate dimensional considerations.
I think quark is about as small as I know. I don't know how much.
I think that's as small as it gets unless I've fallen behind. I only did a year of physics and none of it was astro or quantum. So, you know, mostly mechanics.
That's the one where I have to be like, don't think about it too much.
Don't think about it too hard. Oh, actually, that song does reference physics because it goes, it's a wormhole, it's a Mobius strip, it's Snake Eats Tail, it's the infinity sign. You've not seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, so you don't know what I'm referencing. Okay, never mind.
I have not seen Crazy.
Okay, cool. I'll show you a song
for some reason, it felt like it was from there. As you started singing, I was like, this feels like that character.
It's so good, and I need to tell everyone about it. Stefan tries to bust Caroline out at some point while the heretics are away at a funeral for the irrelevant one.
Malcolm, R.I.P.
R.I.P. We hardly knew you, and honestly, it's for the best. But Enzo's at home playing guard dog at this point. This is when he signs over the house to a human familiar, and Stefan gets yanked out of there because of the threshold magic, which... Was that no, it's not the first time that's happened. Elijah's the first one we see that happen to.
Elijah seemed less like he was getting yanked out and more like he was being crushed and needed to remove himself.
Really? I saw him slamming against the doors. It looked like he was being yanked.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, maybe that was him being yanked. I initially interpreted that as him trying to leave but being a little bit like discoordinated. Uncoordinated. What's the word?
Yeah, you got it. I think you went to discombobulated and uncoordinated.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I guess I interpreted the like when he was doing the little zoop zoop, he was getting yanked and then hitting walls, and he was like, "I can't be in here."
It was wild to see. Like his, he was like on the floor, then revives. He's like cracking, his back is arching. I was like, what's happening to this man?
Yeah.
Stefan's was a lot more dramatic in ways, but also a lot more like clean cut.
It's goofy as hell.
Why are we vibrating? Why are we levitating off the floor?
He gets pulled out a window. It's so insane. There's a bit of camp to it, I have to say. It's not like the more grounded, serious scene with Elijah. But yeah, at the end of the episode, though, we see Nora has given Caroline an actual room to herself while she's being held hostage. And then she gives her a diary and says, "Hey, listen, babe, you think Valerie was trying to help you? She's the worst of us." A lot of British accents this season. Make your peace with it. Also... I recently saw and was reminded that the actress who plays Nora is Pansy Parkinson from the later Harry Potter movies.
What?
Yes, she's the one in that last movie when Voldemort is like, Harry Potter, come to me in 1 hour. And Pansy's like, what are you waiting for? Snatch him. That's Nora Hildegard.
Either I have not watched that final film in a long time. I'd completely forgotten that scene was even in the film. I know it's in the books. I'd forgotten that they even bothered to put it in the film.
So Nora gives her this diary and she's like, Valerie is a vindictive cow, so be careful. And so she gives her a diary that turns out to be Stefan's from the 1860s, which they'll explain later is because the heretics were in a prison world copy of the Salvatore's original home that burned down or broke down or whatever. They had a copy of all Stefan's diaries from that time, just kind of crazy.
Imagine knowing there's this metaphysical pocket dimension that has a copy of everything you've ever written in private that somebody can just find.
All they've had is reading material for like 100 years. How embarrassed would you be?
Oh gosh.
That just like they know all your intimate life.
I'd be like, you have to be staked now, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, you must die. And so it ends with Caroline reading an entry from this diary which shows that Stefan and heretic Valerie have history. At this point, there's another flash forward, again to news producer Caroline, and she's speaking to assistant again, and he's like, oh, you've got another call now. But it's not from your fiancé. It's from some guy called Stefan Salvatore. Which...
What? Plot twist? M. Night Shyamalan.
I do remember this happening. I remember that season 7 is where I stopped watching Vampire Diaries for about 2 years. Because I got like 6 or 7 episodes into the season and was just like, I don't know. And I was watching it real time at that point. And... I don't know. We were talking about this yesterday or the other day, Fadzai, about writing conflict for romantic relationships. And how by the end of the show, their only ideas for conflict is maybe the relationship won't happen. And it's just like, okay.
As I said, yeah, it's this thing you get with stories that are written for young adults and teenagers. That's usually the obstacle in a relationship, is that it might not happen because we're going to break up, or there's another love interest that might be an option, or it's never, oh, we've ended up together, but the conflicts are that it's hard to be with someone
right,
long term,
yes.
Whether you're married or partners or whatever.
Relationships take work.
I guess it would be boring to see them worry about like bills and careers and stuff like that.
But the thing is, right, in a story like this, like the Vampire Diaries, and they do this very well with Elena and Stefan in the earlier seasons, is that the supernatural plot elements are the stand-in for those sorts of problems. The relationship struggle comes in. How do we approach these problems in our lives? Do we have differences? Do we have opposing opinions? How do we navigate that as a partnership? And it just feels like in the back half of the show, they were like, none of that. The relationship stuff and the supernatural stuff are entirely extricated. And the only conflict you'll face as a pair is something's gonna break y'all up. And maybe it's another person, or maybe it's a wildly contrived happenstance that's going to make you do something so crazy that it's simply unconscionable for you to continue be dating.
I mean, I guess if you want a relationship that's facing strife because of the supernatural, you have Benzo.
Sure. Why not?
Pulled apart by siren magic.
Fair enough. Good for Benzo. Glad they get it. He dies in the end, though, so I guess they also can't be happy.
He dies and is a spirit, a ghost, stuck in the pocket dimension that she made. I don't know.
And I was gonna save it for the end, but it really is crazy that like no romantic relationship survives this show except for Delena. And I feel some type of way about that.
Wild that I've never thought about that before. Well, I hate everything now.
So, Anyways, Caroline says if that man calls back, I'm not here. And also, I never want to hear the name Stefan Salvatore ever again. So, if that gives you a sense of what's going to happen 3 years from now. Also, then her assistant gets shot, and then she gets shot, and then the scene ends. Because this is the season of The Huntress, if you didn't know. The Huntress Rainer Cruz is up and about. Yeah, back in present day, Caroline keeps reading from this diary amidst like continued harassment from Nora and Mary Louise, who are not in the next episode. They're just kind of like pretending they're right outside the door. And she's like, thanks, Nora and Mary Louise. And there's giggling off in the distance. And it's like, oh, we didn't get the actors for this episode. All right. She then gets a phone call from Stefan. It's on his phone, which got dropped in the heretic house while he was trying to break her out. He's like, are you okay? I'm working on getting you out. And Caroline's like, no, I'm fine. You just keep Damon from killing any more heretics and we shouldn't have any problems, because that's really the only reason I'm here. Also, hey, who's Valerie, by the way? I heard you knew her in 1864. And he's like, the heretic Valerie? Is that who she is? And before he can say anything else, Valerie herself rushes into the room and crushes the phone along with Caroline's hand.
I do. Sorry for Caroline's hand. I do love when vampires just crush a cell phone.
Oh, it's
in
fun.
their hands.
It's fun. It's just like, hey, remember these guys are strong and they can wreck your shit. Also, I love Valerie's whole vibe, and every interaction she and Caroline have is my favorite. This season, in fact, they have my favorite interactions because they're so different. You said this before, that like you appreciate when there are several love interests for a character and they're not similar to each other. So it's like it doesn't feel like a replacement.
Yeah.
Even though Valerie and Caroline are both blondies, there are cardinal opposites. Valerie is just like pure sarcasm, droll energy, just like every sentence starts as though she would rather be asleep than be talking to you. And I feel that in my soul. Valerie is so particularly special to me. Caroline's doing her best to be like, actually, I don't need to know anything about some random girl who flirted with Stefan a bajillion years ago, she says. And Valerie's like, no, dear, I was his first love. So that's like a, ooh, we thought it was Catherine, maybe.
Catherine Pierce in hell going, what? Excuse me?
Looking from the window of the Hell Corporation building, just being like, that needs to change.
She's busy working her way up the corporate ladder of Kane's business.
She's gotten to middle management.
She's like, now wait.
So Valerie starts recounting how she and Stefan met at a world fair back in Mystic Falls. I think it was Mystic Falls. They may have been somewhere else. She was still just a witch at this time. Siphon specifically. Because she's part of the Gemini Company.
And it was 1863. He was a sweet 16-year-old virgin being played by mid-2010s Paul Wesley.
Being played by 35-year-old Paul Wesley. Hey, it's about damn time. If Damon gets to play 16-year-old himself, why not Stefan?
Wild. I'm like, I thought Damon was like 5 years older than Stefan. These retcon flashbacks make it so that he's like 7 years his senior at least.
It's insane. That scene where Stefan's like 5 years old and Damon is Ian Somerhalder. Hilarious to me. As Valerie's recounting the story, Caroline's like inserting catty comments every so often. And she also clocks that the vervain spell that Valerie put on her skin was so that Stefan couldn't touch her, not for Nora and Mary Louise. So that's like kind of fun.
I mean, Caroline, two things can be true at the same time.
You know,
you don't
she did
know.
help you a bit. She also doesn't want you touching her man. But the fear does start to set in for Caroline of like, okay, clearly this girl's still holding a torch for Stefan. How much would she mean to Stefan now? Because the story is that Valerie was Stefan's first time, and also they were deeply in love, and he was going to run away with her, and then she never showed up. And he waited for like months and months, and then it broke his heart. So there's this sense that like, oh, this was never resolved. This might be, you know, a threat relationship-wise.
And I'm like, Caroline, how many exes have you been in love with? I don't think it needed to be a this point of insecurity. You're a grown woman who's been through so much.
In an insane way, she's dated more than Stefan has, right? We talked
You
about
know?
this about Stefan before, that Stefan doesn't really have a romantic history because he's such a, like, depressive loner sad boy. It's really just been Catherine, who was not a romantic pursuit beyond a certain point because she was abusing him. Then it was Rebecca, and then it was Elena.
Rebecca for like a few weeks at most.
Right.
If not 1 week. I don't know how long they were vibing in the 20s.
Yeah.
Given the way that season 1 Caroline speaks about sex when she's still single, I don't think Matt is her first.
No,
So she's
absolutely
definitely had something before Matt, then Matt, who she clearly loved, who dumped her, by the way.
Yeah,
So she knows what
yeah.
it's like to be dumped by an early love. Then Tyler, who walked away from her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, if you're over it, I'm sure Stefan, who's had over a century and has been in love since then, is probably over it.
But the thing that Valerie says to her is, I'm sure you were someone's first. I'm sure you know what the emotional hold that you have in their heart, no matter how much time has passed. And Caroline seems to, like, acquiesce to this, but they never go deeper into
Well,
it.
she certainly wasn't Matt's first, and she definitely wasn't
No,
Tyler's.
she wasn't. So I'm like, what does that mean? And you had said in the first session, and I forgot to bring it up since because my brain is Swiss cheese, but you had said something about, it was like a throwaway line about Caroline's romantic history, and we never got into it. And do you remember what you meant by that?
I might have just been alluding to the fact that 2, and only 2, she's got like 4, I guess, in the show. Or 5, but 2 of her romantic, I guess, pairings are with people who've already dated Elena.
Oh,
And how much season 1 Caroline would hate that.
I see. I thought you were suggesting that at some point in the show they reveal something about a past love interest that Caroline had, and I was like, I don't remember that.
No, I
at
don't
all.
think they never mention it. You just have to infer that she's had experience when she says things like boy likes girl, girl likes boy, sex.
Yeah. You'd not assume that any of these girls are virgins. Even though with Bonnie, we don't ever really expound upon it. We know that she and Jeremy have their first time, but it doesn't seem like her first time. And it's certainly not Jeremy's, because Jeremy's we know about. It was Vicky. Deflowered and deflowered and deflowered. An insane thing to say.
Insane thing. But
Season 1 was cooking.
yeah, Caroline, I think it's Caroline. It might have been Bonnie. I think it's Caroline because Caroline tends to talk more. When we have the Sire Bond season and a certain pairing hooks up for the first time and it's later on found out, Caroline is like, when you and Matt first slept together, you told me immediately. So I'm like, okay, so Elena's first time was definitely Matt, not Stefan. Yeah, by the time we get to these characters, they're all...
Would that suggest it was her first time total, or is she talking about their first time together?
I'm assuming first time total since she and Matt grew up holding hands.
That's true. They do say that. I wouldn't be surprised if Matt was her first time. I was curious, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, no, these characters were all experienced by the time we got...
Anyway, we've gone into this virginity situation too long. Frankly, it's embarrassing that it's such a key plot point in this first arc. But anyways,
I find it's even more awkward for me to sit there and look at, 30-year-old Paul Wesley and have to think, oh, the sweet 16-year-old
baby
boy who had his
boy.
first time and felt deeply in love.
it's like, okay. All right, guys.
He's sitting there awkwardly writing in his journal. And now I'm old enough that I'm like, yeah, 16-year-olds look like babies. They look like children.
That TikTok trend that's going around, that's like looking at popular characters in media who are young and being played by, adult actors, and then like finding younger pictures of those actors to show how old the character actually is. So getting like a picture from when Jennifer Lawrence was 16 and being like, this is Katniss Everdeen, in fact. And now think about everything she goes through in that story.
Oh no, that's actually pretty
Exactly. My baby, my Shayla. Lily comes back to the house then. This is after she spent a day with Stefan, who's trying to win her over to his side. Valerie has left at this point, and Lily asks Caroline about her dead mom. And Caroline's like, why would I discuss that with you, my hostage taker? Lily's like, I just want to know if people ever get over that. You know, like my son, Stefan, who I thought got over me when I died. Caroline's like, okay, here's his diary that I just got yesterday. Have a read and see how much he loves you and missed you. And Lily starts to cry a little bit and is like, oh man, maybe I'm reconsidering my position on this whole situation with my sons. And then she has the lesbians release Caroline from the house because they have sealed her in with magic.
That is an insane sentence, but okay.
Yep. We've spoken about Lily and the Lesbians, our favorite punk rock band, our favorite cable TV show.
Yes.
Then at the end of the episode, when Caroline reunites with Stefan, he tries to grab her hand, but it burns him because the spell is still on her. She, of course, brings up Valerie, and Stefan's like, I was a kid when I met her. I was troubled. I was young and human. Caroline says, I was young and human when I met you. And I remember the exact moment I first saw you, which we also all remember. She was planning a June wedding. And she asked Stefan if he remembers the first time he ever saw her.
I was like, girl. I was like, now, girl, that's not that is not a fair question. This is
which she immediately says. She apologizes. She's like, that's not a fair question. She says, and of course, you only had eyes for Elena at the time, so why would you have been looking at me? It's like, Caroline, we're regressing, babe.
Yes, I was like, why are we going down this road? Oh my god!
You can't let one British blondie from the 1800s knock you off your game, girl.
It's like that. I'm not sure which season it happens in. It's definitely one you've seen. I think it might be 3 or 4. The season of Buffy where they're dealing with these like waking nightmares that they're all living through, and I think it must be season 4 because Willow's not in high school anymore, and she finds herself in class and then physically regresses to like her old self. With the fashion sense and the long hair before she was a cool witch. And I'm like, Caroline, this is what's happening to you now.
Oh, no.
Oh, you know what it was? It was the end of season 4 when they had defeated that boring Frankenstein thing. And then in the denouement. Yeah, in the denouement, they had that weird dream, and then Buffy sees the first Slayer, and it was like, this would not translate well. It was that thing.
It's like, I'm glad the first Slayer is African because that's the only thing that makes sense, but this is weird.
But yeah, Willow's part of that dream at one point. She finds herself suddenly in class, and she's like, oh no, my old high school self, who I hated when I was, you know, closeted and awkward and shy, and I didn't dress very well, and no one took me seriously. And I was like,
no, babe, you've grown, and you need to love that younger self because you wouldn't be her if she wasn't her.
You know? So now Caroline is asking questions that I'm like, that was a wild question to ask. This is straight men's worst fear. When their girlfriend asks them a question, they're like, I can't answer this without sounding offensive in some way.
This is literally her and Matt in the middle of season 1. It's truly just like, we've sprung back, girl. Stefan is like, again, very fairly, is like, things have long since changed. Different circumstances, different results. You cannot think about like, what does that imply for our relationship? Which is something that'll come up later too, which is kind of shitty. But anyways, he says he doesn't care about the past. All he cares about is that Caroline is safe and that she's here with him. And so then, you know, she responds warmly to that. She goes to grab his arm this time and it burns him. Which, if there was ever a metaphor for like yearning, it's this situation that they're in where they both really want to touch each other but can't. I find it so fascinating.
Doesn't one of the lesbians shade them for that later?
Oh yeah, it's in the coming episode.
Oh, okay. I'll save the quote for there because I remember the quote.
It's a pretty good one. So Caroline and Bonnie reunite in their dorm room. She was off on a Euro trip with the boys, and she's back now, so that's nice. But this season, Bonnie's entire life is Damon and Enzo, so we're not going to see a lot of Bonnie and Caroline, just so you know. Stefan then meets her outside with coffee, and they still can't touch because of the spell. Caroline's like, well, Valerie put the spell on me, and Stefan's like, we shouldn't even bother trying with that girl. She won't undo the spell. And Caroline becomes worried that Stefan is avoiding her. The two of them then have to work together to distract Nora and Mary Louise so that Damon has time to fix the most recent problem he's caused. So Caroline tricks the lesbians into going to this heaven and hell dance that's happening at Whitmore College. She tries to get Mary Louise to siphon off this vervain spell. Mary Louise refuses because she doesn't want to cross Valerie. They're all very afraid of Valerie in this early bit, but then a couple episodes later, they're like, bitch, get out of our way. I guess because they're all united against her, which is a shame because it's in a time where Valerie really needs them. Nora says the same thing to Stefan when he asks her, so no dice there. The next time we see them is at the actual dance, where Caroline is wearing this like sexy angel outfit, which is, you know, and
What was
Stefan
that?
shows up in what's that?
What was that reaction?
That was appreciation.
Oh, okay.
How did that?
I thought maybe you didn't vibe with the sexy angel outfit.
Oh no, that was my brain shutting down because I was thinking about how the outfit looks. Because yeah, one of the others is also in a really. It might be Nora because they make a point that no, even Mary Louise is in a kind of slutty outfit, but they're calling it old fashioned for some reason because it needs to suit this drama that they've got going on. I thought she looked quite good. She's wearing a devil outfit. Nora's wearing an angel outfit, which who could tell what that says about the characters moving forward. Stefan shows up, he's wearing his regular clothes because, as he says to Caroline here, she didn't invite him to the dance. And he shows up and finds her here. And Caroline's like, oh, it's a Halloween party. I didn't think that was great first date material. Stefan's like, oh, so you're saying this isn't a first date? Caroline is like, that depends. What do you think it is? And Stefan looks Caroline down and then up and then says, torture. And I had to just do a quick lap and then come back to keep doing my notes. The thing about season 6 when they started off is that they were very, and I think I called attention to it, is that there was a softness and an intimacy to their vibe. The beginning of this season is all just like hot, yearning sex. Just like they're both being forced to restrain themselves because of magic reasons, and they're just like so horny. Which is fun. They then have to keep an eye on Nora and Mary Louise because those two are dropping bodies for Damon and Lily reasons that don't matter. But the lesbians are wrapped up in some drama that Caroline breaks down for Stefan, which is kind of funny. It's another like, you got that just from watching them across the room? It's a lot like when they tell Caroline, you got all that information about Stefan today? And she's like, no, I did it before first period. Then Nora and Mary Louise are dancing together, seeming to have made up after their drama. And it's like, wow, even the lesbians get to dance and we don't. What does that say about this woke future we live in?
All right.
So Caroline then is like, gosh, I wish we knew somebody who could fix this problem for us. And Stefan's like, okay, I'll ask Valerie to undo the spell once Damon has fixed this issue with Oscar. Because Oscar is dead and they need to find a way to bring him back so they can exchange him. Go back to Lily episode. Caroline's like, okay, so you're not avoiding Valerie. You're just waiting for Damon to raise the dead. Which is a funny line. Stefan is like, oh, she's been out of my life for 150 years. And Caroline says, yeah, and now that she's back, you're worried that you'll look at her once and fall madly in love again. Stefan looks at her kind of frowning and is like, I'm worried about that? Or you're worried about that? Caroline is like, it can be both. So that's kind of like, they're fighting, but it's like at least there's a bit of levity to it. They lose track of Nora and Mary Louise. Stefan finds Mary Louise at some point kind of like slumped over and sad because they've fought again. There's so much drama, those two. He tells her that the Oscar issue has been solved. They've brought him back. He's going to be reunited with their family. Rarely does Stefan do this, right? Which is what makes this scene more interesting to me. Because we know Stefan's very good at getting through emotionally to people. He talks Mary Louise down from this like emotional high that she's on. And once she's like kind of been soothed and has like stops paying attention to him, he comes in and vervains her in the neck and then grabs her. And then later Nora comes looking for her. She finds Stefan holding a stake to Mary Louise's neck and says, siphon the spell off my girlfriend or your girlfriend dies. Which I think is great. Nora, who is a heretic, so she's got magic, she just magics the stake out of his hand. But before she can cast a spell, Caroline rushes in behind her, grabs her mouth and her arm, and tells her to siphon the spell or she will keep burning, because they're also part vampire. Nora has to start siphoning, and then the burning stops. You see the like sizzling and the color disappears. And Stefan's like, did it work? Caroline then snaps Nora's neck Stefan tosses Mary Louise's unconscious body aside, and the two of them rush together and start making out. It is so crazy, and I love it.
I do love seeing the two of them work together. And again, it's like, it reminds me a lot of when Caroline snapped Luke's neck and was like, well, Liv, now you have to help us with this other side spell. I love when she's like, I'm all out of to give. I'm not playing anymore.
Truly. Especially with these people, right, who it's like, they're vampires, they'll come back. Also, they've slaughtered so many people we know in our town. I don't think it's a big deal. And it's very hot for them to, I have to say.
This would have been the episode where where Mary Lou says to Caroline at some point,
yes!
Oh, are you prohibited from showing physical affection for your significant other? Try being gay in 1900. I was like, well...
You make a point, Mary Lou. I guess you do. This is praxis, actually, to have this primary straight couple of the season not be able to get together while y'all can dance. I like that. So they start making out, and then they stumble all the way to Caroline's dorm room. And Caroline's like, wait, this can't happen yet. And Stefan's like, yes, it can. That was the whole point of this. Caroline's like, hold on. First, I need you to know I'm not some insecure, jealous girlfriend. It's just that when I get something I've wanted for a long time, and then Stefan completing a sentence is like, you overthink things. I know, Caroline. Then she's like, I sometimes say something that I don't mean to, but it's only because I'm worried I'm the only one thinking it, which is something that's very true of Caroline. And I actually would like to rephrase what she says here. She says she's worried she's the only one thinking it. Often Caroline, who would put her foot in her mouth, it happens less so later in the show, but she still does do it very often. But it's often something that does need to be said that everyone's thinking. And it's something I've appreciated about her character. But she describes it as like, I'm worried I'm the only one that's thinking it. I would like to say she's the only one brave enough to say it.
You know what I immediately thought of? When good Vampaloric at the start of season 5
right.
is struggling to find Elena's core memory to domino all her Damon memories away, and he calls Caroline.
Season 6.
Season 6, sorry. She's like, well, Elena can't find the memory because she won't admit to herself what we all know, that she fell in love with Damon while she was still with Stefan.
Right. Just to be like, listen, let's cut the bullshit. Why are we all dancing around like this is a particular thing? Like, someone needs to say it. So I'll say it. So Stefan says he's not talking about Valerie because he's not thinking about Valerie. He's thinking about Caroline, and that the two of them have had far more history in the last 5 years than most people have in a lifetime. Which is an incredibly romantic thing to say, I have to, he's not doing too bad. She then, again, she responds positively to this, and she pulls him closer, and they fall into bed, and the rest is history. And personally, I will count this as their first time, because anything before this is distressing, and I prefer not to think about.
So it's been 5 years since season 1. I guess
Yes.
This is the confirmation. So they are 5 years away from grade 11, where they were like 16,
So
17.
they're 22.
Wow, they're still very young.
Yeah.
Which means after the time jump, they're 25.
Yeah, which is truly, if they've like started to play with it in this early in the season of like, we're not pretending that like they've got like kid things going on. After the time jump, these are adults. These are just fully adults with like jobs and like mature relationships. They're like owning property. They're moving across the country. Like they're fully out of that. Which is good. It's your characters need to grow up with the story. We can't be clinging to like all this old stuff, and we can't be staying in the same location all the time. We can't be erecting a university next door to town so we can stay in the town.
Oh, Whitmore College. I mean, better than, I suppose, suddenly revealing in season 4. Is it season 4? It might have been referenced.
That's what I was
on,
referencing.
But
UC Sunnydale.
Yeah, UC Sunnydale. I'm like, there's a University of California campus in Sunnydale, which is meant to be a one-horse town.
Stand me to learn that it was an extension of University of California. I didn't know that's what the UC meant.
I had heard of other UC campuses in real life, so I knew what it stood for. I was just like, your town has one high school. How do you
maintain a university with that one class of graduates? I don't know. They wake up in bed the next episode. It's just morning time, and it's funny. Stefan is very like exist in this moment of bliss, But Caroline is very anxious lying in bed, just being like, I could be doing a dozen things right now. Like, this is nice, but I'm a woman of activity. So it's just this funny moment in the morning of Stefan being like, it's so nice for us to lie in bed together, you know, wake up with the sun, whatever. It's just like a really funny scene. They kiss, it's all sweet. And then Damon comes in. And Stefan's like, what are you doing barging into my girlfriend's dorm room, you weirdo? Which, at this point, you know, there's no point even referencing it. We're so far beyond what will never be mentioned again. I will say, though, this situation is kind of funny because Damon is like, I think I said this to you the other day. Damon is very like, you cute kids getting up to mischief. I'm your older brother / uncle figure, just bringing you coffee and dragging you into drama. Let's get up to some hijinks, which is honestly a version of Damon that I wish was more consistent because he is fun in these scenes. This is like reminiscent of season 3 Damon for a lot of the part, which is a shame.
The islands. That's what I do. You gotta exist on those little islands.
This may be the first, watching these episodes back is the first time I've even broached the Damon Island, the Damon Archipelago. So hello. I wave to you from the shoreline. I've taken a step. So he wants to go interrogate Valerie, but he is not yet aware that this is the same Valerie that deflowered Stefan in the 1860s, and that it's causing a bit of drama with the happy couple. At this point, Caroline is like, she pushes Stefan to go catch up with Valerie because she's like, oh, there shouldn't be any reason it would be uncomfortable for you, right? And Stefan's like, nope. So it's this thinly veiled kind of like, go sort your shit with her so we can move on as a couple, all right? And Stefan being like, yes, dear. So I think that's kind of funny. It's good.
That made me think of that Caroline tweet that I made years ago.
Oh, did you post it on your Twitter, Tyler? Yes, Caroline. I love that.
On your main where everyone can see it. Yes, Caroline.
And then just a big smiley blushing face. I do love that gif of them, though. It's a really cute moment for them. It's at the celebration party after they've desiccated Klaus, which is symbolic. But anyway.
Should have been endgame, but we move.
Hey, you know, we are where we are. Bonnie comes by later, and Caroline tells her, yeah, you know, Stefan, I've sent him off to go clear things up with Valerie, have them catch up. Like, Stefan has this bad habit of bottling up his hurt feelings. And she's like, I want him to work things out with her and clear it all away. And Bonnie calls her the most secure woman in the world, which is a huge win for Caroline, I have to say.
Evolution. Season 1 Caroline could never.
We grow, we leap, we bound. Caroline and Stefan set up a date for that evening, but he's not able to make it back because the main plot drama has gotten more complicated. And she's like, it's fine, but is there anything else more monumental I should know? And Stefan says no, which is not true. There's another flash forward at this point. Around this time, we're seeing Damon and Rick 3 years from now, who are going to rescue Caroline, because you'll remember she was shot up at her news station. And Damon refers to Caroline as Rick's fiancée, which...
When I tell you... When I tell you, I scrum.
The scrum I scrumped.
I was like, what? And I've been waiting to say this. I previously I had said Caroline, who in the books is at best the Cordelia Chase to Elena's Buffy. And even then, not really. I don't think she ever gets as close to Elena as Cordelia begrudgingly gets to Buffy and the Scoobies. But in the TV show, Caroline fills the role that Meredith fills in the book. So I was like,
yeah.
Maybe they got a bit confused, and the spirit of book Meredith, who does get involved with Alaric in their college years, it flowed through TV show Caroline.
Yeah, and now I'm thinking about Cordelia and Wesley Wyndham Price, which is just like equally as gross to me, but whatever. So yeah, Caroline and Rick in 3 years from now are engaged.
Which raised so many questions, because we don't get the context for the other stuff that's going to happen at this stage.
Nope.
So we're like, okay, so maybe something did happen and Stefan eventually went to Valerie And then Caroline moved on with Rick?
Rick, who was her high school teacher.
Rick, who's never looked at any of these kids any type of way. So it's like, where did this come from?
But yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in detail. So Caroline, in present day, goes to Mystic Falls to visit Stefan, just to be like, hey, how you doing, my love? And finds Valerie there, who very deliberately chooses to come down from the shower to reveal that she's here. So Valerie's
no, not the Lexi and Elena meeting.
Exactly that. The thing is, there is nothing going on. We have the privy of the other side of the situation that's like, oh, Stefan's just found out that Julian, this like surrogate stepdad of the heretics who they're trying to bring back to life, beat Valerie so bad that she lost her unborn baby. That was Stefan's. So they've got some drama going on. But you would really think from the outside something shady is going on. It's also crazy because I think this is Caroline's house they're in based on the decor. It doesn't look like the Salvatore house because the heretics have the Salvatore house right now. So, Valerie...
Stefan, stop letting these women shower while they're at your place.
Truly, because it only causes you problems. Caroline very sternly is like, explain? Stefan's like, okay, we tried to burn Julian's body. It didn't work. So now Valerie's in danger. And Caroline's like, not seeing how that's our problem. Because again, these heretics have been nothing but trouble. Stefan's like, all right, fair, but just trust me and that I know what I'm doing. And Caroline's like, all right, I do trust you. But now that I'm thinking about this, it means Valerie needs to disappear. So let's work on changing her identity and getting her out of town. Then Stefan goes off to go try and kill Julian. So Caroline and Valerie are left by themselves. And there's a scene where Caroline is suggesting places for her to move to and some new names. It's this really funny, like mildly patronizing, very petty spiel that Caroline's putting on, which I love. Even though it's a bit of a regression, I do love when Caroline is like... She has really good lines when she's being like subtly, unsubtly, like aggressive. So that's fun.
Aggressive.
Yes, she's being aggressive, just with the really nice words. Valerie, who's equally as messy, is like, oh, I appreciate it, but we don't need all this. Once Stefan kills Julian, I can put this whole mess behind me. And Caroline's like, what mess? Valerie says, you know, the whole reason I tried to kill Julian, my awful backstory. Surely Stefan told you. Like, I asked him not to tell anyone, but I figured that would exclude his girlfriend.
Which is such a shady thing to say. I'm like, now, hold on. You, my ex, who was pregnant and beaten to the point that you miscarried, have told me this in confidence and specifically asked me not to share.
Yes.
Which I, as a decent human being, have said, yeah, as much as I'd want to explain what's going on to my significant other, it's not my place. You've asked me to keep it private. Now you're going to turn around and be like, oh no, I thought that it was obvious that there was a little asterisk at the bottom of that contract that said you could tell your significant other.
Oh, it's purely messy. She's doing it on purpose.
I'm like, Valerie, this was so unkind.
Caroline's like, okay, what should he have told me then? And Valerie's like, oh, never mind, don't worry. I'm sure he'll tell you eventually. Anyways, what's the name you suggested for me? Matilda Pettigrew.
Valerie really, it's that when you're texting someone and you're like, oh, what's wrong or what's up? And then it's like the 3 dots for like 5 minutes and then suddenly, no, nothing.
We need to talk and then no response for 6 hours. Oh, gosh. Valerie tell. Oh, I love her. We move away from this to Rick, which is probably what we were waiting for given the flash forward that was given. Because
I was like, you have some explaining to do, Mr. Professor Alari.
The tendency with the flash forwards this season is that they'll flash forward to something insane and then come back to present day and show you how it's going to start up. They did that with Bonnie and Enzo, or they will do that in the next episode for Bonnie and Enzo, who are in a relationship 3 years from now. With Caroline and Rick is with Fojo at this point, who is a vampire spirit named Florence that they've accidentally jumped into his dead wife Joe's body.
Or Flojo, if you will, because of Florence.
Florence and Josette, Flojo. She is falling apart physically. So he called up Caroline and Valerie, who just tags along, come by. Valerie explains that Joe's human body can't withstand a vampire soul, and that's why she's degrading. And Caroline takes issue with her very cavalier tone about Rick's like tragic situation here, losing his wife a second time.
Honestly, if Valerie had known whatever spell it was that Maddox did on Alaric's body to put Klaus in there in season 2, because Klaus was perfectly fine in Rick's body, and that was a vampire soul.
Yeah, true.
Skill issue.
But, you know. Well, she was trapped in a prison world for 100 years, so she wasn't really learning that much magic.
I guess. Also, I guess when Alaric was being used as a host, they did like a whole blood transfusion. It seemed like they were putting Klaus's blood into Rick's body to prep it.
It was far
And whoever
more
Florence
involved.
is, her body is long gone. Yeah.
And this is with the Phoenix Stone, which is an entirely different, maybe sect of magic. So Caroline stands by and watches as Rick says goodbye to Florence. It's all very sad. She's just like watching him go through this. And then the two of them go into the other room where Valerie is watching Rick and Joe's wedding video, which is really just like evidence of her massacre, of her murder at the hands of her twin brother. It's kind
Why
of
was that
messed
on?
up.
Did somebody else leave it on? Was it Rick?
Yes, Rick apparently watches it sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Rick will watch the wedding part and then stop before the massacre happens and then just like cry himself to sleep, essentially. It's so sad.
Okay, so at least it was set up believably.
Yeah, it's not like Valerie went, and even though I do believe she would, it's not like Valerie went digging through his tapes and then loaded it. She figures out that Rick and Joe's twins, because Joe died with her unborn twins, are still alive because of a spell the Gemini Coven cast. And so she does a locator spell on them using Rick's blood, which goes off the map towards Caroline and then sets on fire the way she said it would if they find them.
I think at first she didn't actually know they were in Caroline. She was like, they're alive. And then when the blood went towards Caroline, she was like, see, your spell didn't work. You don't know what you're doing.
Caroline's like, babe, I need you to pay attention, okay? It went straight to you. These fetuses are in your body, my love. Which, wild, right? Just like conceptually, because vampires are undead, they are always harping on about vampires biologically cannot have children, they cannot reproduce, and so it's like, then what the hell is gonna happen here?
I will say that this universe's version of vampires are probably the most alive that we've really seen vampires in fiction. They eat, they sleep, they
breathe.
They breathe. They don't need oxygen, but clearly not being able to breathe is horribly uncomfortable for them and will cause them to temporarily die.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, it truly just seems like the only thing that's changed beyond, you know, all the vampire stuff, the only thing that's different from, like, human biology is that they drink blood instead of eating food. And they can still eat food, too. They process it. Which, that means I assume they must also poop.
I've always wondered. I'm like, do they poop? Because it's food they don't need. So surely...
Right. Assuming all your organs are working, it's just like you don't take in the nutrients. You just process it and dump it all out. That's crazy.
Because we never hear about their toilet habits. It's just Vicky thinking she needs to pee and then finding out, no, false alarm.
I guess that doesn't make for entertaining CW drama, so, you know.
I have questions.
This is for the guidebook that you release separately as a companion. Yeah, the next episode is largely them trying to confirm that Caroline is in fact pregnant with twins as a vampire, which seems insane to her, so she's in denial about it the whole time. There's a side plot this episode about a blood farm that someone's making in Mystic Falls that I think is Julian, but it literally doesn't matter and doesn't come up again, so don't worry about that.
I think Caroline takes pregnancy tests, which again I'm like, so whatever hormones would be going on in your body are the same as
your
the living
HCG
humans.
levels, right?
Are the same as the living humans, which I'm like, okay, fine, it's magic. I would have many questions about how that might be affected by a blood diet or a body that can magically regenerate or all those things.
We're kind of just rolling with it. So Valerie is being very pushy and insistent about it, but we find out it's because of her own drama. She explains to Caroline the whole situation about her being pregnant and Julian terminating her pregnancy against her will. She tried the spell before that she heard the Geminis doing in the wedding video, but because she was by herself, she didn't have the power to do it.
Which again, I think it was very neatly tied together with her being like, of course I would know that spell. It's not just because I'm a Gemini witch who knows every Gemini spell off by heart, but it's because specifically I will never ever forget that particular spell. And it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I like when it's not too contrived.
Yeah, I honestly, there's a number of things here that they thread fairly well together, which is great, especially with this show in its back half. She also confirms that it was Stefan's baby, which is the secret that he's been holding from Caroline. They test twice for the baby, once with the stick and the other time with the sonogram, and it's negative. But then Valerie figures out that the twins were cloaked, and she uncloaks them by siphoning the magic away from Caroline's belly. And then they retest with the sonogram and find Caroline is for sure pregnant.
Which we've discussed in the Rick episode, I believe. I was like, so the cloaking magic extended to her pee, so that whatever hormones should have been in her pee were now magically cloaked to not look the way they should look if you're pregnant.
Yeah, and it's like
making the stick react the way that it did.
Did she pee a little cloaking magic out with that?
I
Like,
guess.
how does that...
Or did the cloaking magic like extend to the stick so that what we're actually seeing on the stick itself isn't the real result? So many questions.
Also, I guess that
it
confirms...
cloaked the second line that's supposed to appear on there, or the one line, whatever it is, or the plus sign.
Maybe it just works on your eyes, I guess. Anyone who's looking at it. But also confirms vampires poop and pee, because she has to pee on that stick.
There we go.
So...
finally, 6 seasons later, we get the answer.
the answers we were all looking for, am I right, listener? The next episode, Caroline makes an Elena diary entry about this. That's basically like, I'm happy for Alaric and the survival of his babies, but also, what on earth does this mean for me? Because again, this girl is 21, 22. She's going to college. She's planning this whole future. And now she is pregnant with twins. Which it's like, it's not her twins. It's Rick and Joe's twins. But now she has to like carry this pregnancy to term and then give birth. And it's like, whoa. It's a lot going on. She goes to tell Stefan. But when she shows up unannounced, she finds him with Damon and Valerie. They're planning to go take down Julian finally. And so she's like, this can't be how I share the news with other people in the room. Thankfully, Valerie has the tact to grab Damon and be like, let's go, Stefan will catch up with us. And she rushes Damon out of the room, who's being like, what? No, what are you talking about? She tells Stefan, we need to talk. And we cut to her handing him a glass of whiskey, which I thought was hilarious. Because it's twofold. It's like, the heavy news you've just received requires a drink. Or sometimes when, like, I think it's an old-timey tradition, when you find out that you're pregnant, like, men would, like, pop open a bottle of whiskey and drink it. And then sometimes once the delivery has happened, they'll, like, light a cigar. I think that's things that men do, right? Is that coming from nowhere?
We know men.
We know men and masculinity. I think that's true. Don't quote me. She's like, look, it's crazy. I know. I've been going insane. So I understand if, you know, it feels a little overwhelming right now. Stefan's like, I have to go. Caroline's like, huh? And Stefan's like, oh, no, obviously we need to talk about this, but we've got this very narrow window to kill Julian, who is my mom's emotionally abusive partner, and killed my unborn baby I just learned about. So the timing is kind of rough right now. So he heads off. Later, she gets a call from him after they've apprehended Julian. And he's like, okay, sorry about earlier. I think we're settled now. I did not know what to say, and I did not want to say the wrong thing. And Caroline says she guesses there's no right thing to say when your girlfriend gets magically pregnant with another man's babies. So this show, man, sometimes... She says she gets it if Stefan wants to run for the hills, and he immediately is like, oh, I'm not going anywhere, because I love you. And this is the first, like, proper I love you that they've had. I think in the last episode of season 6, he had said, here are all the ways that loving you has changed my life. But it's like, you would presume they already loved each other in some way because they were really good friends. But now this is the, like, romantic I love you. So that's nice.
And also, I'm like, a supernatural metaphysical pregnancy. Why would that make Stefan Salvatore run for the hills? Do you know what this man has lived through?
It's very much playing in that space of like, and this is an energy that will carry through the season for Caroline, the like unconventional family dynamic, right? It's like, ooh, we started dating when I was pregnant with someone else's baby, and some men would be averse to that, you know, because there's a weird like vibe. Like there's just a very real life thing that's happening of like, how do you navigate these interpersonal dynamics when it doesn't look the way you may have expected it to in terms of relationships?
Yeah.
Which, as you rightfully say, Stefan is above all that shit. But yeah, she's like, I guess there is a right thing to say. And he tells her, no matter how weird it gets, he's here for her and they'll get through it together. And at the end, she tells him that she loves him too. And then his mom dies. So that just kind of happens.
I mean, the gods of the TVD universe were like, now hold on, Lily. Don't think I hadn't realized that you are a parent of a Mystic Falls gang member. You have to die.
Right.
No parents
You
allowed.
think just because you're a vampire, you get to stick around? No, babe. We get another flash forward. This one is just Stefan, who's been on the run in all his appearances in the 3 years from now.
Just running from this unknown character who uses she, her pronouns. That's all we know.
Right, exactly. That's about as much as we know, but we'll learn later he's been running from the Huntress this whole time. And now he appears to be with Valerie in Chicago, where we see him. So, yeah, it's... I hate this show, man. I hate it.
It definitely, it kept me curious. I think in a season where we were now dealing with no Elena, no Nina, and maybe for some people that would have been like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I think that the whole time jump thing, it definitely would have been like, okay, I need to know what's going on here. Like, why is Caroline engaged to Stefan? No, she's not engaged to Stefan. She's engaged to Rick. I need to know why. Stefan's being hunted. Wait, Stefan got with Valerie, even though he just assured Caroline that everything was good between them. I have to stay on.
God, and that's why they did it, right? God, Bonnie and Enzo are together. They've barely spoken one word to each other since he tortured Jeremy, her active boyfriend, that one time. What's that about? Guess you stick around and find out. It's smart. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
I still hate it. In present day, we cut to assumedly months later, because Caroline is now very pregnant.
She's like, I really popped this week. And I'm like, this week? It just like
week?
on Sunday you weren't showing, and then you woke up on Monday and you were showing. I was like,
That's the thing. Weirdly, in the story, they're treating it like Lily just died maybe last week. And I'm like, that is like a 5-month pregnancy, Belly. And they've also like jumped to Christmas. So none of this makes sense to me. I don't understand it. Anyways, she is in full birthing prep mode. So she and Alaric are now going off to classes to prepare for the birthing.
of course.
We talked a lot about this in his episode.
From a Caroline point of view, it makes total sense. She want to be as prepared as possible. She's gonna do all the research, all the prep. It is type A Caroline.
And she and Rick have settled into this dynamic despite the weirdness of their situation. You see when they're like at the class and they're already got like little inside jokes that they're saying, and it's sort of like the banter that's happening about Rick being the man in this pairing. They're bringing these children to the world, and God, I need you to be prepared. And Rick is like, I've read the Feminist Guide to Pregnancy, actually, so you've underestimated me. It's cute. It's really fun and cute.
Rick is like, you're type A Caroline, but don't forget, I'm an academic. I'm a scholar. I did research and stuff before I became a vampire
I'm a professor of history. I understand all you ever see of me is drinking whiskey and like fighting vampires, but like I'm a nerd. But yeah, there's almost an incident at the class. She almost attacked someone for making snide comments about them from afar. What does she say? I didn't write it down.
I vaguely remember what she said, but
Because it was a girlie who recognized Alaric as a professor from Whitmore.
And they were like, it's the professor and the student. What's the bet she's acing his class?
Right, exactly. And it's like, ooh, it does look like that though, doesn't it? Because they don't have the magical context, and it just seems like this professor knocked up one of his students.
And I'm like, is she even in any of his classes? Doesn't he teach occult studies?
Yes. But the thing is, Elena might have just gone to that class to go speak to Rick, but she sits through the whole class, which is like, okay. But it seems like she's in his classes. And she's a medical doctor. I don't know what these girls do at school. Bonnie's major, I don't think, is ever revealed, and she's the only one still going to Whitmore, really. But yeah, Alaric has to get in her way and like calm her down to be like, your vamp face is showing, and she's like, oh, it's just the hormones. When they go back to his place, he throws her a blood bag while he gets a beer for himself. Again, it's like there's this dynamic building. She's freaking out a bit about being unprepared because this is not just pregnancy, it's this unusual magical twin pregnancy. And Rick is assuring her, he's like, you're doing great and I'm so grateful. You've like changed my life. You're helping me like get my family back. And then she freaks out at him as well because it's a lot of pressure and assumedly her emotions are even more heightened now that she's pregnant, which sucks. After this, she goes to visit her mom's grave because it's her first Christmas without Liz. She tells her about her pregnancy and how it's all so different from how she thought that this would be, how she envisioned herself being pregnant for the first time. She says something so lovely. She's like, even though these babies aren't mine, they're still my responsibility. So I have to make sure I'm doing this right. Which is just so...
It's so very Caroline.
Infinite empathy. So just like caring and kind. And she says she wishes she could ask Liz a million questions right now. Ends on this really like somber note of like, yeah, you really want your mom with you in this sort of situation.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you could always go give Haley a ring if you want to let bygones be bygones.
It's a shame Lily's dead, because Lily's the one she could have asked about all this, being her almost mother-in-law at this point, you know? After this, crazily, both Damon and Stefan get stabbed with the Phoenix Sword at the end of an episode. So Caroline's there when Nora stabs Stefan. We'll get into that some other day, but they both go into the Phoenix Stone, and next is that bottle episode with Damon inside the stone, Hell is Other People, which go back and watch that episode, or just go back to the Damon episode to hear about that, because it's all very interesting stuff that goes on there. We only see her at the end of this episode where Damon busts out and stakes her in the chest because he thinks he's still in the stone and needs to kill everyone in order to reset the hell loop. Thankfully, it's not lethal, so she manages to then vervain Damon while he's distracted. After this, we get flashbacks of Stefan's experience after the Phoenix Stone, because we don't see him in like an actual episode going through it. And him and Caroline trying to get back to normal and not being able to do that very early on because he's got like crazy PTSD again. She is now twice as pregnant as the last time we saw her because, again, Candace King was pregnant in real life when they were doing this season, which is a bit why the storyline also came to be. We see her next on the phone with Stefan, and we get the sense that outside of that period post the Phoenix Stone, that they've been doing pretty well. There's a great moment in this episode where she's pushing him to sort of unload about what happened in the stone. While she's on the phone with him now, she's talking about the baby shower that she's throwing for Alaric, and they're talking very casually about it. So it seems like they're handling this pregnancy Rick situation very well too. Yeah, also around this time, she's stressing a lot to Rick that once the babies are born, it's all on him and he needs to be prepared because she's going to be out of the picture. But we're also seeing that bit by bit, she's actually growing attached to these twins in her belly. In fact, when Rick tells her that he's leaving with them as soon as they're born, Caroline gets really sad about that, but can't like vocalize why that upsets her.
It's wild seeing all this and knowing that somehow the end result is that they're engaged, and you're like, okay, how is this going to play out?
Big old question mark. Then comes the fateful day itself, which is not... It has to be like a month or two earlier than they expected, because it doesn't seem like she was ready to give birth. Well, I guess they're talking about it, but they don't make clear how close it is to like maybe what they were expecting was going to be the due date. Stefan comes by Caroline's dorm and brings her some food, because she's all cravings right now. She's like, I love you. And he's like, is that for me or for the fries? And she says, do you want me to lie to you? That's fun. Then she starts feeling some cramps or pains or something. And when she gets up, she gets really dizzy and collapses. Stefan rushes her to the hospital, where the doctor assures him that she and the babies are fine. It was something about the blood vessels dilating or whatever. It's to be expected. She then says it's best to keep the father in the loop. So can we contact her boyfriend? And Stefan has to be like, no, I'm her boyfriend. the father's in Dallas, I'll call him. Which is like, I appreciate the gag, right? Because that's a good joke. But also I'm like, the doctor knows enough to know that the man she's talking to isn't the baby's father, but he doesn't know that this is her boyfriend. Like, how was the information disseminated here?
They've also been hearing gossip about the professor and the student.
At this hospital?
Small town, man.
It's just weird. It's like, if you know enough to know that Stefan's not the dad, then you must know him well enough that he's come in with Caroline for like checkups and shit. So it's just a weird question. I guess it was for the joke, which is funny, but... Anyway, turns out that the twins are siphons, and they have been sucking up Caroline's vampire magic because it's nice and tasty, I assume. Stefan has to go rescue Damon from himself again. Like I said, the Damon from the first arc completely disappears, and we're in just like a really bad era with Damon in this arc. So Valerie stays with Caroline, but when Caroline wakes up and finds that it's just Valeria and Stefan has disappeared, she gets really upset because she thinks Stefan has gone to go kill Julian for Valerie's sake, to be like her knight in shining armor or whatever. Valerie tries to explain. She's like, no, it has nothing to do with me, actually. And Caroline's like, go and make sure that he's safe. I don't want you here.
Gosh.
So she then has to leave.
And also, I'm like, aside from the other motivations that might be there, I'm like, Stefan has the right to hate Julian for his own reasons. I'm like, that was also his unborn child. It doesn't need to be for Valerie's honor.
Yeah.
The people in this show are very big on revenge and payback.
As we know. And it's also like, clearly some time has passed. Again, it has to be months because she's now giving birth, or was close to when she was going to give birth. And there's been nothing between Stefan and Valerie. So it's just a bit, I don't know. She's pregnant and stressed. It's okay. But I don't want to be like, ooh, the pregnant woman is hysterical.
She's hysterical.
What? What are we talking about? I don't know. It just sucks that that's like still an issue at this point.
As they were siphoning the power of her vampirism, they also siphoned away, all that growth and confidence that she got during season 2.
God. She is feeling very vulnerable at this point, I guess. And Stefan, as her partner, is like her rock, right? So for him to not be here while this dire medical thing is going on, it sucks. They both leave, and Caroline's by herself in this hospital, and only in the next episode, when Stefan comes back, does he find her now unconscious and like she's desiccating from like her extremities going up to her core. And so he gets a bunch of hospital doctors working around the clock trying to do a C-section now to remove these babies that are hurting her.
But the twins are like, nope, no C-section for us.
We're not
we like it in here.
You think with this magical buffet we're just gonna hop out into the real world? Absolutely not.
What is it they do? Do they like make a force field so the scalpel won't go?
Yeah, this is crazy too. From inside the womb, they throw the scalpel out of the doctor's hand and it hits the wall. It's like, how much sensory perception do they have from inside their little room? It's wild.
Gosh.
And they're like healing Caroline again too, so that they can't like get through her skin. Valerie then plans to channel enough magic outside of Caroline to draw the twins out. She's like, here's a tastier meal.
Which again, it's like, wow, so they can sense this external source of magic from far away, and that's gonna make them willing to be removed from her womb. I was like, okay.
Yeah, sure.
I mean I don't know how much fetuses know.
Because don't people play music for their children while they're pregnant, and they say they can hear that. So I guess like your magical perception can also extend that way. I don't know.
I guess. Yeah.
So yeah, they do the spell. She gets help from the heretics, which Caroline is obviously very distressed by because the heretics have tried to kill her and all of them before. But Stefan is like, baby girl, I'm not letting anything happen to you or these babies. Trust me. The doctors try the C-section again, and it's actually going now. It's progressing while these heretics are chanting. But then 3 of them have to go on the run because the Huntress has showed up. So Valerie's left to keep the spell going herself.
I do like that she chooses to stay and do it. I'm like, oh, look at that.
Icon.
Burying the hatchet.
Yeah. Stefan goes into Caroline's head and he gives her this sweet mental date so that he can keep her company while everything else goes on. She leans into him and she's like, oh, thank you. Very Very sweet. And then Bonnie arrives and joins Valerie with the spell. So that really like facilitates things. She also tells Stefan, hey, your brother needs rescuing again. So he has to leave just as Rick comes into the room. Rick, who they called from Dallas, who had to speed all the way back, which is wild. Finally, the babies are born. And when Caroline wakes up, because she's unconscious most of this episode, Bonnie tells her, don't worry, the babies are healthy and they're beautiful. And when she asks where Stefan is, Bonnie has to tell her, assumedly off screen, that he has been marked by the Huntress Rena Cruz with her Phoenix sword, which means she can track him wherever he goes. And he is now on the run.
It's rough. It's tough. At least he didn't have to, because I was thinking now when he initially left her to go kill Julian, I was like, I wonder how many memories of Tyler choosing his vendetta with Klaus over his relationship with Caroline this might be bringing up for her. So at least now that he's unavailable, it's not because of like some selfish sort of reason. Even though I don't want to paint Tyler as too selfish for hating Klaus. I completely understand.
I don't.
But, or Steph as selfish for hating Julian. But at least now it's like, oh, Stefan has been marked and would never ever put you or your babies in danger by sticking around. Of course he skipped town.
Yeah, and I will say the thing is, at this point in the story, Stefan had actually abandoned his vendetta against Julian right around the time Lily died. It's Damon who has this weird back and forth with Julian now. Because you'll remember this is the arc where Julian is grieving Lily and Damon is pretending not to grieve Lily. And there's a fighting ring in Mystic Falls that Damon gets into. So that first time that Stefan goes off to go find Julian, that's what's happening. It's not for Julian, it's for Damon, who's going to get himself killed. And even now, Julian's not even involved in the situation. He's gone after Reyna, the Huntress, because Damon is trying to get himself killed. Because he refuses to give the Phoenix sword to her. The thematic thing going on in this middle arc for Stefan is that he always ends up getting screwed over trying to save his brother. The Phoenix Stone as well, his experience in the Phoenix Stone, is about him having to leave Damon behind if he wants to live any sort of fulfilled and happy life. This now is impacting the happy life that he's trying to build with Caroline. So there is an essence of that where it's like there is something that Stefan is choosing a little bit over Caroline, but it's not a vendetta with some like old ass vampire. It's his brother who he's been inextricably tied to his entire life.
Which figures.
Yeah, it's always been an issue, Damon. It's always been his albatross. So yeah, Caroline and Stefan exchange I love yous and goodbyes. And she says something so real and true because she's really understanding about it. She's like, I get it, you have to go on the run now, but I wish it didn't always have to be you. Because it's always Stefan having to like abandon everything and save the day. Which we'll get into at some point. But here we are.
Another boyfriend has to run away.
It really is crazy that like post Matt, who I guess, you know, that inevitably would end because of the vampire stuff. Both Tyler and Stefan, it's like, God, these relationships can never just like exist in present day because the two are always being separated. And truly off of season 6, where this pairing was like going through a lot of strife, it just seems like the hits don't stop.
Yeah. But silver lining, on a shitty day, Rick does bring her the babies.
He does.
And tells her that while one has been named Josette after her biological mother, the other has been named Elizabeth after Liz Forbes, Caroline's late mother.
So sweet. It's so incredibly sweet. After this, Caroline insists on going with Rick when he moves to Texas after slandering a number of hardworking nurses from the hospital. Really just starts eviscerating some working class people who are just doing their job. It's a little bit a project to distract herself from like Stefan's sadness, but also, as we've said, the idea of these babies and her being in their lives has started to burrow itself in the back of her mind. So that's also going on. So she goes with Rick to Texas and she stays with him for a little bit. They start settling into like a routine with the newborns. And at some point she has a call with Stefan, while he and Valerie are like on the run, because Valerie has joined Stefan on the run to help him find a way to stop the Huntress from finding him. And they're looking for this herb that can conceal him from Reyna. And he suggests to Caroline that maybe she could tag in for Valerie and the two of them could go on the run. And maybe on the way they can like see Europe together, make it a little bit romantic, even though it's a bit dire. Caroline at that point is like in the middle of changing a diaper. And she's like, look, man, it's a war zone over here and Rick needs my help. And Stefan's like, yeah, I get it. She then asks him what his feelings are about Dallas, since the babies are here and all, suggesting that like when he's done with the Huntress stuff, she and Stefan could move to Dallas to be closer to the babies. And Stefan is like kind of mulling this over, but at that point Rick calls for help, and so Caroline has to go. They say I love yous, and they end the call. But gauging from his like expression and response in there, it's like he didn't seem super. At the very least, it's not something he had been considering would be a concern.
I guess he just thought, you're just gonna be a surrogate and then go on your merry
Rick
way.
will leave with his babies. Yeah. At the end, the Huntress gets captured and locked up by the armory. I can't super remember how that happens. Stefan does still have the mark on him, and there's like a patch that he was wearing, but I don't remember how long that lasted. He then comes to Dallas, unbeknownst to Caroline, and he sees her and Rick through the window of his house, and they're holding the babies and like laughing together, and it's giving very like picture of this nuclear family. It's very domestic. And he clutches his chest where the Huntress's scar is, and then turns around and leaves. And that's when they roll through the 3-year time jump. From that, we learn Stefan left and then never communicated with Caroline again and effectively abandoned her, right? That's the fact of the matter. We'll leave a Stefan perspective for another day. From Caroline's perspective, Jesus Christ, how many men are going to walk out on her, you know?
Tyler, Stefan, Klaus after that quickie.
Her dad, right? Who left their family to go start his own life, even though she loves her dad.
I mean, that man had to get out of that small town. He wasn't going to find anybody there.
It's true, he needed to go live his big gay life. But sometimes to do that, listen, it's very falsetto. Sometimes you have to leave your partner and child behind to pursue your truth. And that sucks. At this point, when we return, because like 3 episodes pass where Caroline is not in the season. Presumably, she had given birth in real life, Candace King, and had to like do maternity. When we do get back with her, it's at the Forbes Saltzman home, because they are now engaged, as we know. And Stefan has come by again after they've settled things properly with Reyna Cruz now. She's actually kind of now on their side. This is when he spends the day with Rick for whatever reason, instead of just waiting for Caroline to get back when he didn't find her at their house. When Rick and Stefan come back, they find that Caroline's here. She locks eyes with Stefan for like a good long moment. Again, they've not seen each other in 3 years. She then tells Rick, hey, it's good to see you. I'm going to put the girls to bed. Happy you're home. Gives him a kiss on the cheek. And leaves.
So the cold shiver that ran down my spine and then across my entire central nervous system when she did that.
It's just so awful. It's just like, I really want to know who did not want these two together so bad.
I was like, and why like this? It didn't need to be like this. You could have done all of this. This entire plot could have happened exactly the same way, but without this thing that, Caroline decides to rebound with Rick, and Rick is like, yeah, sure, I'm totally falling in love with you. Because she could just be co-parenting and be pissed off at Stefan, and that's why she's not willing to give him the time of day. Not, I'm unavailable because I'm engaged.
I think we briefly talked about this in the Rick episode, and I was like, I guess it adds an extra hurdle, because it's like, you can resolve the fact that you're pissed at Stefan, right? That can be like, okay, I forgive you for abandoning me for 3 years and not responding to any of my communications, which Stefan did already, right? In the beginning of season 6. So this is a redoubling of efforts. I hate that this has to happen again. But like, even if you resolve that, well, now she's engaged and she has children with this man. So it's like, it's an extra, because they keep trying to give storyline hurdles. They keep trying to drum up conflict so that they don't just end up together because that would be too easy, right? So I guess that's why.
Get me out of here.
I guess also from Caroline's perspective, there's something about Caroline that's seeking this like nuclear family thing.
I think she
Maybe because she
we have discussed that because she had her own traditional family breakup as she was growing up. And I think she did say to her mother when she was speaking at her grave that, when I pictured myself like, pregnant and about to give birth, it was like married and, settled down. And now it's like,
finished college, had a job.
I guess that's her Freudian excuse. I'm just like, to the writers who did this.
What is this?
It didn't need to be this way.
Because, and again, this is all retread of the Alaric episode. This relationship is a bit odd. It really is. It's like, it makes sense in the sense of like the intimacy that is formed with them as co-parents of these twins. But it is like you were her teacher for so long. And then now you are dating her. Yes, she's a vampire, but she's a vampire frozen at 17. So it's not a situation where, don't worry about the age gap. One of them's a vampire. That just comes with the genre. It's like, no, the one who's the vampire is a teenager. And you are, I was going to say pushing 40. He's past 40 now because of the time jump. Rick is in his 40s. So it's just a little bit weird.
They're super strange. I can understand why Whitmore is filled with gossip. Because from the outside, this looks insane. This college student who looks young for her age, since I guess physically she's 17, suddenly she's having the professor's babies, but claims that no, they're not in a relationship. It's just, no one's business because you can't explain the supernatural thing. Then it's like, no, actually, no, now they're engaged and cohabitating. They moved to Texas. But meanwhile, inside the house, they don't sleep in the same bed. So I'm like, Caroline, what are you actually doing? I'm confused, Caroline. Just a marriage of convenience? Just to have, like, as we said in the Rick episode, just to have that structure for the kids' sake, not because she's necessarily...
Stay together for the kids.
Okay, so a platonic kiss on the cheek is what she gave Rick as she walked in.
Yeah, we get the sense they've not, been physical. They've
Thank God.
not... Yep. There's nothing actually developing here. We get from Stefan and Rick's conversation that Rick is in love with Caroline. And he does sort of thread a lot of that to the fact that she has birthed his twins and helped him raise them. And they formed a little family that, like, in the process of them, like, co-parenting, he has fallen in love with her. Which in itself kind of has its own nuances to it, I guess. Ugh. But from Caroline's end, we haven't gotten a sense of how she feels.
Rick, this isn't you. No, Rick is either a young Gen X or a very old millennial. He's not familiar with the concept of platonic soulmates. He doesn't get it. He got a bit confused and assumed that this deep feeling must be romantic love. Because what else can it be?
No comments. Oh, plenty comments that you can go back and find in the Rick episode, which I do enjoy. So yeah, the following episode... She and Rick go to help clear Reyna's list of Phoenix Stone vampires so she can give her last everlasting life to Bonnie because she's dying from those magic pills that were made of Reyna's blood. You simply have to go back to Reyna's episode for this. We don't have time. There is a back and forth with Caroline and Rick. He's saying, listen, we don't need to pretend Stefan doesn't exist. Like, y'all need to take time and sort out the trauma that you'll have before we decide to move forward as a family. It's very like how Caroline was being when Valerie came back into the picture towards like Stefan and Valerie, which I thought was funny. Caroline asserts she didn't have anything to say that night and she doesn't have anything to say today. Then when Bonnie gets turned into a huntress, again... Just so much that goes on. Caroline goes into her mind using vampire mental powers to try and wake her up, but she gets physically marked by Bonnie the same way Reyna could do to vampires. Stefan then tells Caroline, okay, listen, you've got to go on the run now, the same way I had to go on the run. Like, I've experienced exactly this before. And Caroline becomes upset by this because she's like, oh, I saw all your little Eurotrip postage stamps in the postcards that I guess he sent. I I don't know. She's like, yeah, you were suffering greatly while you were visiting Paris and London and Romania or whatever. She's like, listen, we'll figure this out on our own. I need you to respect my choice to not run away like you did. I'm not abandoning my family. Oop. And once she turns her back, Stefan grabs her and vervains her.
Stefan, what are you doing this season?
Don't know what he's doing this season, Fadzai. They try to explain it in this coming scene, but I still think it's weird.
Stefan, this isn't you.
This isn't you. That's what Caroline tells him. Caroline's like, this is so not you. What's going on? She wakes up in a hotel near an airport, or maybe connected to an airport. Not a hotel, it's a motel. They stepped outside and it was like motel vibes. He's got bags and tickets ready. He's like, girl, we're going on the run. She starts raging at him, of course, because it's like, what the hell? And he says, you can be mad all you want, but let's do it on the way out of here. It's just a very Damon energy that I'm not about. She does bring up, hey, this is very contra to what I thought your ideals were. You don't just kidnap people against their will. You respect people's choices. And Stefan says, until it comes to life or death, which is not true. Caroline says, you gave Elena that choice.
You know... bringing up her worst fears again, that Elena will always exist on a higher standard than she does.
It's like 6-7 years after this shit, and somehow we're still here. Stefan's like, yeah, then I lost her. Referencing the time where Elena asked him to save Matt on Wickery Bridge, right? Because he respected her choices then, and he saved Matt, and Elena died. And it's like, the fallout of that situation, the thesis as I remember it, is that you still came out on the better end of that, because Elena was like, what would have been the alternative? Matt would have been dead, and I would have been miserable. And honestly, she might have just killed herself after that anyway, so what are we? To keep it 100. Caroline says, maybe one day you'll give me the same respect that you gave her.
Damn.
Which just Caroline and Caroline's relationship with Stefan in the story, post Elena and Elena's relationship with Stefan in the story, just feels like, I don't know why we always have to regress into this energy of like, oh, she's not Elena and she's not his true love, and like he always afforded her the respect that he just simply cannot to Caroline. It's just so bizarre to me, and it's so unnecessary.
I guess it makes sense for Caroline if you believe that she has not entirely gotten over that insecurity. Which, I mean, you know, being able to exist in spite of your insecurities doesn't necessarily mean that they're gone altogether.
For sure.
Especially now that she's in a relationship with this man who, in the beginning, essentially chose Elena over her. And the only reason that they are able to be with each other at all is because the Elena of it all didn't work out. I can understand why, with anger and bitterness that's been festering for 3 years, she might be having thoughts like, oh, yeah, I'll take pot shots at the Elena specter that I'm going to pretend is hanging over our relationship, and be like, well, you gave her respect you never gave me, and you wouldn't have abandoned Elena for 3 years. And it's like, well, I think we're past that now, Caroline. But, you know, you say what you need to say, I guess. Don't hold it in.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. It just often also feels like even the story, with the way Stefan is acting this season, and frankly last season, is just like, God damn, Stefan. Like, how many times are you gonna screw this girl over? I don't get it. Anyway, later, Caroline's at her car in the parking lot, and when Stefan finds her, she's like, okay, well, as I've now figured out, I'm in the same position you were in 3 years ago. But that makes me more mad because I know what a huge decision this was for you, and you made it without me. Which is fair. He then tells her about the time that he came by to Dallas and saw their happy family arranged conveniently in view of the window.
I mean, aren't they always?
They always. And he was like, I didn't see myself in that picture, and I convinced myself that I was doing right by you by leaving. And he apologizes for that. He then says the thought of her getting hurt is not one he's willing to entertain, which is why he's done all this. And she tells him, you hurt me more than anyone has ever hurt me before, because I loved you and you left me. Oof. Bonnie calls because she's awake now. She's been in a coma this whole time. Self-imposed. She was trying to protect her friends. She's now coming after Caroline. So they have to move. She calls home and tells Rick while they're driving. Rick is very understanding, very supportive. And they have this emotional goodbye because theoretically she may not see him or their kids for years now, because Stefan had to be on the run for a while. And then in the finale, they need to get into the armory to burn that last everlasting so that Bonnie will be free of like this huntress curse, effectively. They never call it that, but it is like the hunter's curse. So Caroline has to go back to her home and bring the twins. And so they bring the twins to the armory and they siphon the magic that's sealing it shut. Bonnie had sealed it shut to lock all the armory goons in the previous episode. She and Stefan then have a small heart-to-heart, and it's about how she wants her kids to live as normal a life as possible. Stefan tries to give her some advice, and then there's like... there's a little bit of jokey joke where she's like, because she thanks him for his advice, and then she's like, don't think this changes anything about you leaving me and also kidnapping me literally just hours ago. And he's like, no, I'm not off the hook. And she's like, no, you're not. And Stefan says, I don't know, I feel like there's a thaw. And she's like, no, there isn't. And it's just like this bit of banter that's like, okay, we're working our way towards being all right again. Stefan then splits off because he has to, again, go deal with Damon stuff. So she keeps going and she calls ahead to Rick to tell him, oh, this is where they get the twins. And she tells Rick that the twins are his, so it's his decision to make whether they like bring them into essentially the line of fire, bring them into this dangerous situation they're in. And Rick is like, no, these are our kids, dear. We will decide. So together they decide to bring the twins to the armory. They break the seal. Then, a bunch of other shit happens with Bonnie and they win the day. At the end, Rick tells Caroline that he will always love her for changing his life, but it's clear she doesn't feel the same about him. So he's going to take some time with the kids while she figures out if she and Stefan are going to rekindle things, but they will always be a family. That's how they leave it, which I think is a nice button to their interesting situation.
And thank goodness. Thank the old gods and the new.
For Stefan and Caroline, after literally like an hour after this baby, they are standing outside the armory. And she tells Stefan, I lied earlier. And he says, about what? And she says, there was a thaw. And then he smiles, and then they kiss. Which, a really quick reunion, but honestly, I don't care because the fact that all this shit happened anyway pisses me off. And I'd rather be past it. I'm happy for them to just literally reunite the day they found each other again.
Yeah, it's season 7. I'm not going to be upset that, irritating and frankly kind of gross hurdles are quickly overcome.
Yeah, I'm over it. And honestly, because this is the end of the season, that's where they leave it. That's the end of season 7 for Caroline. There are more hurdles coming ahead. Because again, for whatever reason, they did not want these two to be together or happy. Like, neither of those things can happen for them.
It's the curse of Caroline. She's not allowed to just be in a happy relationship.
It really isn't. There's a number of great scenes with the twins. Maybe I didn't touch too much on Caroline and the twins. It's cute. They have a really sweet relationship. They consider her their mother. They don't know any different. And it's very lovely. She very much settles into that. I mean, it's 3 years later, but she's very much settled into that maternal role.
Yeah.
And it's not odd because, again, these actors are in their 30s at this point, so... Truly.
Certainly a lot more to do that is about her, because I felt like some of these, season 5 and season 6, it was like, oh, what are you up to? Season 6, of course, she had, the whole her mother storyline. This season, I feel like she's more active
centered.
In a way. Yeah, centered. I guess it's also the absence of Elena, where she and Bonnie are now the main girlies. They're sharing the main girly role. And of course, the show will always pay Bonnie the dust. So, by extension, that means Caroline is getting her flowers.
And Bonnie is spending a lot of time helping idiot men do idiot things.
Yeah, and Damon is her best friend, so she's tied to that storyline all the time. Caroline being the first, and I guess only, at least as far as on-screen stuff is concerned, person in the group to become a mom. I guess it makes sense. She was always like, you know how they make those jokes when they're like, oh, the mom of the friend group, when people are like teens or young adults.
Your mom friend. That's lovely. Presumably Elena also became a mother. She was going on and on about kids, right? I have to assume she and Damon had children.
Yes, I won't say.
Are there
I won't say
spoilers
too
that
much,
you can't talk
but
about?
yeah.
Okay. Great. Guess if I ever watch Legacies, I'll have to encounter baby Gilbert Salvatore or whatever. Ugh,
I don't. You might not encounter them. I just know someone is mentioned by name.
Gotcha. Good to know.
The name is offensive. That's all I'll say. I was like, how dare you?
Oh, did they call the child? Did they name them after Stefan? I bet
It's
they
Stephanie
did.
Salvatore.
I'll kill every single one of you.
I was so upset. I was like, how dare you?
How dare you? Yeah, no big thoughts on my end. As you say, it's a lot about her navigating this odd family dynamic she's thrust into, her taking on the responsibility of these children and coming to love them, her shifting her priorities in life because, you know, adult life is very different from being a cool college late teen, early 20s. It's like you gotta grow up in ways you didn't expect. And she maintains the Caroline all the way through. She's still fun and bubbly, even though she's a bit more serious. She's still, again, infinitely kind. She stays strong throughout it all, and I respect it.
Yeah. And I do love the idea of, like, it's sort of similar to when she was dating Tyler in his werewolf era, as brief as that was, where it's like, oh, she's this strong, protective girlfriend to this, like, weaker romantic partner. And now it's nice to have this, like, oh, she's this super strong, super powered, protective mother to these...
She's super mom.
to these kids that
To
she
these
now
vulnerable
has.
babies. Yeah. Season 8. Always a strange beast to engage with, because who remembers anything from this season, and also how much matters beyond a lot of rehashed themes in the storylines.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of Vampire Diaries fans didn't even make it this far.
You know?
So...
Although, there's I've referenced it before in the podcast, there's a Jenny Nicholson video that's like a deep dive into the show.
Yes, I have watched that.
You have seen it. She shows clips of people who did like reactions to the finale of the show who had been watching it consistently. And I was like, wow, okay, I guess there are a few out there who made it all the way to the finish line for better or worse. So yeah, I mean, the season starts off, Caroline and Stefan have reunited. Rick and Caroline are co-parenting, but Rick at the end of the last season has made the decision to take over the armory because all the armory goons got like slaughtered by the Siren, who will become the villain for the first arc of this season. So there's really no one to tell him no. And so now they're like...
Which honestly is the Mystic Falls way. Taking over town councils and properties and sheriff stations because your predecessors have died and there's no one to tell you no.
Everyone who could block you is dead.
Bonnie gets to have her triple roommate situation with Elena and Caroline because Haley Cuoco
died in the episode she joined the show. Like, truly, the world will rearrange to make things good for these people.
What was her name in the show? I'm always calling her Haley Cuoco. It's Megan?
Megan King. Megan King is her
King.
actual name. It's kind of crazy that the armory, everyone who was working for or connected to the armory was in the armory when Bonnie sealed it shut. That's the extent of that organization. Embarrassing for them, frankly.
Basically a glorified town council,
you know,
in and of itself.
A town council with like Hot Topic outfits. That's about all they are.
So I guess Rick just left his Dallas professor job?
Yeah. Why not? It's not like it's hard for them to get jobs. They have compulsion. They're also rich and white. So it's not like there's a lot working against them.
Put in his 2-week notice and was like, yeah, I'm moving back to Virginia. Oh, where is the armory? In Virginia?
It has to be in Virginia because there's a tunnel underneath
the hollow Virginia. The hollow earth of Vampire Diaries.
Where does it lead again? Does it lead to Mystic Falls?
It leads to Mystic Falls. It also leads to, I guess, their little hell doorway.
Sure. Why not? So yeah, Caroline and Stefan are, you know, continuing to build their relationship while she's like co-parenting, while she's working now as a newscaster, as we saw in the flash forward.
Well, news producer.
As producer, sorry, news producer. Enzo and Damon have been snatched up by the Siren and they are now killing their way across America. So the gang is, whoever's left of the gang is trying to find them. They have a new nanny called Celine, who is a good nanny, but Caroline takes issue because she's young and hot and that might distract Rick. Or, I don't know. I can't remember what her
Which is like, why do you're not in a relationship with Rick?
That's kind of the joke, right? Is that like, even though they're not together, Caroline's still like,
You're frozen at 17, and it's not like you're like, oh, my withered aging self and the hot young nanny.
You know? as most decrepit mothers with 3-year-olds would have to contend with, I guess.
I mean, that's how the stories will treat them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so at some point, Celine calls her and is like, hey, did you come home? You're not home, right? She's like, no. And then it's like, oh, somebody might be in the house. And then she tells them to hide away. And Celine gets her throat slit, I think, by Virginia St. John.
And that's when Caroline vamp rushes home immediately. And I'm like, super powered mom. We love it.
We love a superhero mom.
Celine playing the role perfectly. She's like, oh.
Because if you don't know, Celine is also a siren.
Yes. I'm not using my psychic powers to know who's in the house. I'm on the phone with Caroline sounding terrified. I let my throat get slit and lie on the floor bleeding out when I'm immortal.
I'm method, bitch. I play my role correctly. I love that these sisters, very similar to the Parker siblings, just being like, anything to commit to the bit.
Oh, yes! Liv was like, I don't know how I do the things I do. I'm just some freak, okay?
I'm just some weirdo and all these things happen. She gets staked through the stomach by Elena and it's like, girl, you don't have regenerating capabilities. You're gonna die.
Raised a witch, has known about her magical heritage longer than Bonnie, essentially from the Gemini royal family.
Right. Luke letting himself get fed on by Catherine and pretending he's being compelled. Actors, all of them. Caroline makes it back. The girls were playing hide and seek, I think, so they're stashed away. And she eventually finds Virginia St. John and attacks her and wants to know why she's come, but Virginia bites off her own tongue before she can say anything. And she bleeds out and dies. After that, you can go back to Damon or Enzo to learn how the MFG were like tracking them and like trying to figure out what is this monster that has them under their control. She's doing a lot of like girl in the chair. She's looking through news reports. She's checking satellite maps, that sort of thing. And she directs Stefan and Bonnie as they go off to go rescue their, I was gonna say their boys, but it's her boy and his brother. There's the Sarah Nelson stuff. Is she there for that?
She is, because she gets her ring thrown away and staked in the back.
Yeah, so Enzo reveals to the siren, I was gonna say not on purpose, but it is on purpose. The siren is rifling through his mind, and so that she won't find Bonnie, he reveals Sarah Salvatore, and so they go after Sarah Salvatore. And so Stefan, Caroline, and Bonnie go rescue her. And there's a whole lot of drama there that has nothing to do with Caroline. Largely, she gets attacked by Damon. She, as you say, staked, ring thrown away. There's that moment where it's like, girl, I think if you just ran across really quickly, you could go snatch your ring.
You know?
But I guess she's just stuck there.
Speaking of actors dedicating themselves to the role,
right.
Catherine stood in the sun when Klaus compelled her, and she had to pretend she wasn't on Vervain in season 2.
Elena multiple times has stood in the sun on purpose and used it to her benefit to burn somebody. So it's like, why doesn't Caroline get to do this? I don't know. Oh, there's a bit of drama sort of around this time because Bonnie sort of runs off and abandons them to try and save Enzo. And Enzo's like, girl, I'm mind controlled. I'm stuck to her. She will find me. And in fact, he starts dying because he's too far away from the siren. So when they come back, Caroline's like, damn, girl, you really just left us out to die? Bonnie's like, look, my man has been snatched. Your man is sitting nice and comfortable with you in y'all's marriage bed. And I, for whatever reason, am just living in the same house too. I guess because, she can't be by herself. It's a very tragic time.
They don't have jobs. Maybe she doesn't own property.
That's true.
Although I have to assume she inherited Sheila and Rudy's houses.
2 houses. And she has a different house she bought in New York. Oh no, I guess she buys that in this season when she gets Enzo back. But yeah, she's got the money to get another house that her dad left her. So I don't know. Camaraderie. She's like, you guys are happy and coupled up and loved up, even though Damon's in trouble for sure, but at least y'all are together. I'm here by myself. And Caroline's like, you're right. I've been neglecting you as a friend because this is the 2 seconds I've had to even have my relationship in earnest. So that's my bad. I'm not saying that facetiously. It is a pretty genuine conflict. I'm just still frustrated. So she tells Bonnie she will be there for her. And, I think at this point too, I can't remember if it's before this discussion or after, Stefan following them trying to get Damon, finally getting to him and then not being able to save him. Stefan decides, I'm going to keep trying to get him back, but I'm not going to put my life on hold. And he proposes to Caroline and asks her to be his wife, which is all very lovely. So Caroline makes a decision to be like, I'm going to be more active in standing by you, my friend, and making sure that your happiness is also front and center.
The writers could never.
Right? Them pretending in this moment. Sarah dies in this episode. It's not the hugest deal to anyone but Stefan. This is when he proposes to her. This is when he's like, hey, let's make this shit real, girl. Because it's not real unless you're married. I joke.
I mean, that is how society will treat it.
You know? After that, Bonnie comes through to congratulate her and start planning her wedding. They're going dress shopping and they're gonna do everything. And Caroline's like, we don't have to make a big thing about it, especially considering the conversation we just had. And Bonnie's like, no. I'm happy for you. I'm not pretending. I'm putting my drama aside. This is when Bonnie is like, yeah, we're gonna plan your June wedding, which is kind of great that she remembers. Actually, it's kind of insane that she remembers from back in season 1.
Maybe,
Caroline
you know
said
what?
this.
You know what was insane? Caroline saying that in the first place was insane. Maybe that's why it's a core memory for Bonnie.
That's
She's like,
fair.
I can't believe you stalked this boy in between like 3rd and 4th period and assured me that you would get married in June.
Or maybe it's just always been her thing, regardless of who she marries, she wants a June wedding. I get that. You know, some girls will have like their full bridal binder planned from when they're like 12 years old. I've heard that's a thing through American TV and movies.
Yeah, and it's always a Caroline-esque character.
You know?
Got that thing.
So fair enough, it tracks. This is the episode where they have that encounter with Damon. So I guess Damon attacks her twice. In that other one, she just staked her, pulled off a ring, and left her in that corner. In this one, he attacks them in the bridal shop while they're looking for dresses. And they're throwing the bouquet as a practice, which is fun. And he comes through and attacks them. Bonnie does not have a magic at this point because Bonnie is not allowed to be powerful in the story. So she's truly like a human.
When you said Bonnie does not have her magic at this point, I'm like, you could isolate that part of the audio and no one would know which point in this 8-season show you're talking about.
Ooh, Bonnie, we're gonna get to you, girl. You're gonna have your day. Wait, he disables Caroline first, and then Bonnie has to run on foot, and then eventually she loses him through the dresses, and then Caroline comes back and stabs him with the curtain rail. They head back to the Salvatore house, and they're like, okay, so now Sybil is a problem we need to deal with. And they're talking about like planning guests for the wedding and how they can't invite Damon now because he's 1, humanity off, and 2, working for the Siren. And this is the fateful episode where they run into Sybil waiting for them in the Salvatore home. This is, I mean, everything that the Sirens are involved in is incredibly insane and fun. But this episode is especially fun because there's an energy of like, us girls, you know? Now that the boys are away, let's have some real chat. Even though it's this like 2000 some change siren that like eats people.
It's always these ancient figures in this show who are just hungry for this millennial gossip. First it was Klaus.
Right. Then it was, I mean, who else? It really is just Klaus.
I mean,
Marcos doesn't do that shit.
Ketsia and Silas had a few moments here and there where they were like, beyond our own drama, your guys' drama is also a little bit interesting.
I'd say Ketsia specifically. Silas very vocally was like, I actually don't care about any of your bullshit. Leave me alone. Didn't like Damon, was repulsed by Elena. Nadia would tell him some stuff and he's like, oh yeah, your tragic backstory I super care about. He's done with this shit. It's Klaus, it's Ketsia, and it's Sybil who are really the ones that get into it. And that's fun.
I guess Silas is in the Catherine camp. He's like, I'm stuck here dealing with it, but it's not the best use of my time.
Yeah, I truly could be doing other things. So Sybil is here to box with Bonnie, essentially, because Bonnie has both her boys in a tizzy, because she wants to have complete control over them. But Enzo, who is her beloved, and Damon, who is somehow still connected to her, are like unable to let go.
Her bestie. What do you mean?
All
Her
right.
platonic soulmate.
Okay. She tricks Enzo and Damon to, well, not trick, she psychically manipulates them into fighting each other at the school to the death. So Stefan has to go off and like stop that. Caroline, Sybil, and Bonnie then end up driving to Mystic Falls. And this is the scene where Caroline really subtly hints to Bonnie to like put her seatbelt on, and then she hits the brake on like a car that was going at full speed, and Sybil launches off because she don't know what seatbelts are and flies through the windshield and crashes so far away on the road. And then they drive off and leave her there. It's so comical. I love it.
I'm gonna show that scene to all these South African drivers who I see in traffic with their like 3-year-old kids sitting not just without a seatbelt, but like in between the front passenger seat and the driver's seat with their head like popped in there, speaking to their parents as they weave through traffic. And I'm like, this is incredibly dangerous and illegal. Please sit down and buckle your seatbelt.
Caroline gets to Stefan, Enzo, and Damon in time. Stefan is about to kill Enzo to stop him from killing Damon. And Caroline has to stop Stefan because she promised Bonnie that she would not let Enzo die. Because Bonnie tells Caroline, if they're fighting to the death, Stefan's gonna protect Damon. No matter what. Enzo's got nobody but me, and I have no powers, girl. So what am I gonna do? And Caroline's like, don't worry. I said I got you, and I got you. Which is a great showing for Caroline, because it's like, listen, I will navigate my relationship later. For now, I'm gonna stick by my friend who has asked me to help her in this very dire way.
Yes, Caroline. Some friends could never.
Listen, people who forget their friendships when they go into romantic relationships, Caroline could never. Damon then shows up and snaps Caroline's neck, so she's not there for the rest of the fight. They end up capturing Sybil. It's not a big deal. I think she might be the one to like knock Sybil out, so that's fun. I guess she helps Bonnie while she's trying to like get his humanity back on, because at this point Enzo has switched his humanity off. The siren made him do it, but now that the siren's captured, they actually have an opportunity to like work on him. What's up?
I'm sorry. You said the siren made him do it, and I thought of the devil made me do it, and the fact that they work for the devil.
Yeah. Well, that's the energy we're in, I guess. After that, they find out Tyler's been murdered by Damon. So that's a huge sort of downer on an already like rough time they've been having this season. Matt's the one to make the call because he has found Tyler in the middle of the road in Mystic Falls, which is so dire. And so sad. His best friend of however many years, and you just find him in the middle of the road dead. And Caroline's second love, maybe.
Second relevant love, at least.
Relevant, yes, to the story. So they all get together and have a funeral. She has to deal with Stefan, who's now, like, furious that Damon has crossed the line, as we often pretend.
Every damn season. Although I will say, I was like, I know why you did this, because this is technically a line we'd never crossed before. Killing off a main character for good and for real.
Yeah, you have to qualify for good and for real, because he's killed main characters multiple times.
That's why I put the qualifier. It's like, no, Tyler is dead. There is no other side. There's no Phoenix Stone. He's not coming back. This is the final season. It's over. And I'm like, for the sake of... But anyway, Caroline eulogizes him nicely, I guess.
Yeah.
She's like, I loved him. We all did. And I was like, yeah, but you know what you meant, Caroline.
She says, before that, she says they haven't spoken in months because they were both so busy. And it's like, God damn. She's one of his pallbearers, which I think is lovely. Because she, Matt, Rick, and Stefan carry his coffin to the grave where they're going to bury him in the Lockwood plot. Well, it's not a plot specifically, which is strange that the Salvatores have a plot and the Lockwoods don't. But I guess the Lockwoods got rich after.
Lost scion of the Lockwood house. I guess he has Lockwood cousins. We've at least heard of Lockwood girls.
Oh, someone's about to inherit a shit ton of money, so that's, good for them. Yeah, Damon shows up. He's dug a bunch of graves that are supposedly for all the main characters. Just bullshit no one cares about. Caroline is like, get out of here. Nobody likes you.
She literally says that. And I'm like, you're so mean. She was like, no one wants you. Like, they just seem tired because he's trying to scare them. And they're just like, just go away, Damon. Like, leave us alone.
Doing? No one cares. I think really the only thing that happens after that is they go to the carnival. Stefan has them all like go to the carnival to like have some fun afterwards or whatever. This might happen after they've taken down Damon because Stefan is like on a vengeance mission and then Caroline has to go save him and she's the one to shoot Damon and take him down. Because earlier she'd been like, listen, I'm gonna be your wife. I need to be by your side helping you. And Stefan's like, I need to do this on my own because this is my bullshit that I need to fix so that we can move on and live our lives. She's like, that's nonsense. And then she shows up and helps him because that's what partnerships are about. That's what relationships are about. They have a proper service for Tyler. They all say their goodbyes. And this is when she's like, I loved him. We all did. And she says she's happy that he lived a bigger and much more important life than that of a small town kid.
We'll never know.
Wish I could have seen that life.
You know?
Exactly.
Wish we could have seen it.
Because what was Tyler doing off screen? They said he was working with the Armory. We never see him with the Armory. After the Armory, he still seems to be doing some sort of shit as he's driving around. Never explained what that is. Why did he run into Damon? Was he on his way back to visit his friends? I don't know.
Maybe he was sponsoring Jeremy on Jeremy's vampire hunting crusade.
That's what I had asked when we were doing the... What episode were we doing where... It might have been the Enzo episode where he says on one of Tyler's hunter sojourns is how he describes how he got in touch with the Armory. And it's like, Tyler's hunter sojourns? When was Tyler doing hunter stuff? So I guess maybe.
Maybe they were endgame after all.
God, how I wish. Jyla for real. That's when Stefan has them all go to the carnival and they have a little bit of fun in the memory of Tyler. I think at the end is when Caroline, being that typical mom, was like, oh, my kids, they're so grown. They're basically teenagers. They're 5 years old. She's showing pictures to Matt, and Matt sees a picture that has Celine in it. And is like, I've been doing research on the sirens, baby girl. That is the other siren that we've been looking for. So Caroline and Rick rush back home because, of course, they've left their kids with the nanny to come do this. And when they get home, the twins are gone. And there's a drawing that's left behind that the twins have done of the two of them with Celine. And they don't know who the other figure is, but we know it's Arcadius.
Old Scratch. The devil himself.
That's crazy. Rick and Caroline link up and start going, it's this shit and nothing else. Anyone gets in our way, we're barreling through them, bitch. Our kids have been snatched. Caroline takes off her wedding ring and gives it to Stefan and says, I need to focus on my family while this is happening. So until that's sorted, hold on to that shit, boy.
Her engagement ring, I should say.
Engagement ring, sorry, what did I say?
Wedding ring.
Wedding ring. They're all in like overdrive trying to find them. The sirens are off with Damon, I think, because Sybil was with Damon and then Selena was with the twins and they meet at some diner. Stefan tries to help them find the twins because he's also got his own shit going on. They try to work through Enzo, who's psychically connected to the siren, to try and see where she is. But when they get to that diner, they're already gone. And that only like adds to the tension. First, Stefan does a thing where he goes, okay, I'm taking care of the situation. In that psychic mind space in Enzo's mind while he's being tortured, he makes a deal with Sybil because Sybil is like, if you want to see those twins again, you can come meet me at a disclosed location without telling anyone. No questions asked. And Stefan's like, okay, I'm doing it. Tells Caroline he's doing this, but he can't tell her the location. And she says, how dare you? You've got no right to cut me out. These are my children. And Stefan's like, I'm gonna sort it out. Don't worry. Let me do this. And he heads off. She tells Rick what's happening. And Rick like kicks a car or throws a bin or something masculine and rageful. He tells her that once he gets his girls back, he's taking them away from this town and from all this vampire bullshit that plagues this life that they live. And she's like, from me? And he's like, girl, you're also a vampire. This darkness surrounds you. It surrounds all of you. And she goes, how dare you, bitch? You need to take a breath because those are also my kids. I may not have... Well, she did give birth to them. They may not be biologically my kids, but I raised them and I love them just like I were their mother. So that's crazy. And Rick is like, they're mine and Joe's.
Which I was like, you pulling rank in this moment.
It's rough. They do get to a motel where they find Stefan with the twins because Stefan has now made a deal with Cade to serve him because Damon has made a deal with Cade where he says, don't take these little 5-year-old girls. Me and my brother will be your killers. Has not consulted Stefan at all in this. Has fully just sold him down the river. But Stefan does it because he's Stefan. They get their kids back. And after that, Rick apologizes and says his head was in a bad place. Like their kids were kidnapped, of course. And that's when she's like, oi, you better check your shit at the door because I raised those babies too. And I was dying when they were missing because I didn't know where they were or what had happened to them. And he says, you're right, fully sorry, never happening again. She does then say, though, that like, okay, you were right about one thing. This shit does follow me. So I need you to take the twins away until I can promise you and make sure that all of this supernatural drama is done with and that they will be safe. And so that's what they decide.
On Rick's part, I don't think I delved too deeply into this in the Rick episode, although I did have a lot to say about it back then, but I was like, I'll save it from a Caroline thing, because I'm like, okay, the surrogacy aspect of it, the willing, non-exploitative surrogacy Caroline goes through, or at least that she was prepared to go through initially, and then give up these kids and be like, I'm done, these are yours, not my business. I'm like, as soon as the decision was made to co-parent and cohabitate and have these children call her mom, I'm like, Rick, I'm sorry to say you lost the right to try and pull rank and throw genetics in Caroline's face.
Oh, for
that
sure.
ship sailed when you decided to have her live in the same home as these kids and have them know her and have a relationship with her.
No, it's true. It's true. And I mean, like he says, I don't think that was like a moment of logic or rationality for him. That was him in a moment of fury. But
I'm still like, oh, it's really shitty to think that
It is.
okay, if you get angry again, you might just have that on the back burner and be like, these are my kids, so I get to make decisions. I'm like, she birthed these children for you, Rick, and she
literally
almost died.
birthed them. She literally birthed them. That is their mother, you bastard. I'll kill you.
She birthed them and then raised them. She didn't birth them and then leave. And now it's like, yeah, you're the legal guardian. She's had nothing to do with their lives. She doesn't have the right to come in. I was like, no.
She's on their certificate. That's their mom. There's no avenue of this where you could cut her out.
And sorry to say, but they don't know Joe.
Right. Which is very sad, and that'll, that's going to be an issue that they have later on in their adult years. But, like, this is their mom. And frankly, what was your plan, custody? Were you gonna tell a court that she's not actually their mom, she was a magical surrogate?
He was gonna say, do a DNA test, and you will see that woman is not genetically linked to my children.
DNA will do that. But then Caroline can just compel the doctor. Now what, Rick? You little bitch. Which I guess is his point, right? Because she could just do that if she wanted to.
Supernatural Family Court. I would watch that show.
Yeah, then after that, she has to speak with Stefan and learn that he's now gonna go away for a year to go work with Cade because that was the price to bring back their daughters.
Gosh. Again.
Yeah.
Caroline.
Yeah.
Jeremy and Rick have the curse that their love interests always die. Caroline's curse is that her love interests always leave.
I hate it. And the sucky thing too is that he's leaving tomorrow. They have 24 hours left together. So this is goodbye. It's also conveniently Christmas Eve, I guess, because in the next episode they have a Christmas dinner. Unless Caroline moved up a Christmas dinner hella early so that they can have this last date.
I would believe that she would do that.
Right, because Stefan's leaving and also Rick is leaving with the twins, which is just like all of her family is going. So she throws that Christmas dinner that Damon and Sybil come in gate crash.
I always had that image of it's Damon showing up at the door with Sybil on his arm, but really it's Sybil with Damon on her arm.
Oh yeah, he's the arm candy in that situation. That's the gag. Again, Caroline in her wine mom era, just being like, oh god, I just need this one night to go well, and everyone is bringing their family drama. It's so funny, even though it's so stressful. Bunch of stuff happens that's not relevant to her. At the end, Rick leaves with the twins, so she has to say goodbye to them, and also Stefan leaves to go do his year with Cade. It's kind of crazy. It's her and then Matt who are the only ones left in town. But like Matt is off doing some shit with Dorian because Stefan and Damon are on devil duty. Bonnie and Enzo are in Paris. And then I don't know where Rick and the twins go, but they're somewhere. So Caroline's just by herself. And so she's like, I guess I'm going back to work. This is when she does that interview at the high school for like a human interest piece of some kind, like some sort of news report on the alumni. She finds Sybil teaching that class. She's got her little apple. It's just and she ends up getting taken hostage by Sybil. And Sybil takes the whole class and is like, come on, loves, it's a field trip. And they head out to some outdoor place where supposedly the 100 witches burn. So I guess it's near that church that Stefan was hiding those coffins in back in season 3. I have to assume.
I love that the episode is called We Have History Together, which I'm sure is a quote from something from the earlier seasons.
Yeah, because all the episodes this season are quotes from prior seasons.
Yeah, but it's like, oh, we have history together. Like, oh, we have English together. We have math together.
History I didn't realize. That's
Sybil
really
is
good.
forcing
I like
them to like
that.
take a little trip down memory lane through the real history of their town.
She said, you've been hearing a retconned revisionist version. Let me tell you the true tea, my little chickadees. Well, in addition to that, she does have them tie themselves up on stakes in this place and is threatening to have them burn themselves at the stake like witches if Caroline doesn't get her this bell that she's been looking for. So she and Matt do find where the bell was being kept. It was actually kept by Liz Forbes in 2009. It has to do with some sort of Confederate parade or other. It's not there. Selena's already snatched it up because Selene on the other side of the story is working her own angle that's different from the angle she was working in the previous episode where she was like, I need to make amends. Bizarre. After that, it's the Miss Mystic Falls pageant for this year, which Caroline is now hosting because truly there's no one else left to do it. This is gatecrashed by the Salvatore brothers and also Sybil. Stefan at this point doesn't have his humanity on. And so when they crash the pageant, he's being so awful to Caroline. I just hate it. It makes me so sad and it makes me so angry. But here we are. He also kills this girl, Violet Fell, of the notable town fells, I guess, and then turns her into a vampire. Why? Not super sure. Caroline has to like coach her through the transition. At some point, I think she either snaps Stefan's neck or like stakes him through the stomach to just be like, just lie down. I'm tired of dealing with you. And then in fact, at the end of the episode, she ends her engagement with him because she's just like, I can't deal with you while you're like this. Which...
Another obstacle.
It's fine. It's story. It's narrative.
I mean, it's a supernatural one at least. It's Cade and more Ripper stuff. I wonder how many Ripper arcs does Stefan have through the course of this show?
Season 3 is the first one. Season 6 is the second one. And then this is number 3.
Okay. Not counting flashbacks.
Not counting flashbacks.
I mean, I might count when he was going a little blood crazy in season 1 after Elena had to save him by feeding blood. Okay. I mean, he almost killed What's-Her-Face. Or did he kill
doesn't
her?
kill anyone, though.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
They get him before he goes over the edge. And in fact, he himself is just like, I'm gonna kill myself. So I don't do this. So... And as you've said before, I think you said in the Damon episode, they hadn't contextualized that whole thing yet until season 3. So can we call it a Ripper phase? Retroactively, I suppose.
I guess, yeah. The Ripper, the nature of Ripperness is just...
It shifts.
Yeah.
It shifts and changes. The episode after this is that one where Damon goes catatonic because Sybil showed him the hell that's waiting for him after all the awful things he's done, and he simply couldn't deal with that. So now he's just like sitting in a chair with his eyes staring in the middle distance. Caroline and Bonnie have to go into his mind to try and help him, and they are unable to like see anything except for the hellfire of hell. So they go downstairs to Sybil, who they're keeping in the Salvatore cell. I don't know how they just... Oh, the bell. They use the bell and that little bocce ball to disable her. So she's just like sitting down there. So she explains to them, okay, what needs to happen here, because she comes up and is like, I'll guide you through his subconscious and that's how I'm going to help you. So long as you give me that bell that I've been asking for the entire time I've been here. And when they're inside his mind, she tells them, oh, okay, so it's all this like guilt and shame or whatever. He needs to feel forgiveness in order to wake up again. But then when they're in his mind, they learn that actually he doesn't give a shit about Caroline or Bonnie's opinion of him. It's Stefan's forgiveness that he needs. So then they get Stefan. I can't remember how, because again, he's a Ripper at this point. And Stefan shows up and like tries to forgive him, but Damon says, it's not me who needs your forgiveness, brother. It's you who needs mine. And at that point, I lost interest. So we're just gonna leave that where that is. And then at the end of the episode, Caroline tells Stefan as he's leaving this situation, because he's like, all right. She's like, I'm going to keep trying to get you back, even though you suck right now. Unfortunately, the sirens die in this episode. So after this, there's not a lot that's terribly exciting. There is a time capsule day thing going on.
Oh, is
the
this...
situation where you put up...
Sorry, this...
Yeah.
The episode when they're in Damon's subconscious... Is that the one where she runs into, I guess, Memory Liz?
Yeah, it's Damon's psychic manifestation of Liz Forbes.
Manifestory.
In which he's doing his best impression of a slightly butch police sheriff. And then he also does psychic blackface as Graham.
Okay.
So that's fun. Love that.
Not psychic blackface.
You know? He pulls it off well, so I guess that's something. Maybe Caroline has a moment with her in that. I don't know. I think she doesn't really act like Liz. She acts like season 1 Liz, who's like, vampires need to be killed. Right. So yeah, there's the time capsule. People sometimes will put stuff into a shoebox and then bury it so that they can either find it years later or the aliens can find it. So that's the thing. And there is a time capsule from 1790 that was placed, which really throws into question when the founding of this town happened then. Because I know that they settled before 64, but it can't have been 70 years before that.
Well,
how is that possible?
We've already established that at least the Maxwell ancestors and the Bennett witches and other black people were in this town before.
And they put in a time capsule? Do they do that?
Perhaps? I don't know.
All right, sure.
We'll have to ask Elijah. He was the one who was like, oh, this town actually wasn't founded by the founding families. There was a collection of African-American witches who lived here.
Why not? It is interesting that he says African-American, but then uses an entirely different word for Native American people that maybe should be left to them to use. Interesting. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot that happens here. It's just more about Stefan being off the rails. I guess they've captured him at this point. She has a fight with Matt. The devil is in town at this point, so things have just gotten more dangerous. And she offers her blood to Matt in case, if worse comes to worse, he can survive as a vampire. And Matt's like, I'd rather die in hellfire than be a vampire. Which, props to Matt for being consistent for season after season. They try killing Cade, at least Damon tries killing Cade, but it doesn't work out because he's immortal. Caroline's the one to come up with the possible idea that they can use the cure for immortality to make Cade mortal and then maybe kill him that way.
Which, again, Caroline, your scientific process, I'm like, the cure for immortality is based on the spell that Silas and Kitsia, but mainly Kitsia, created to make the first immortals, which Esther then remixed to create the original vampires. Why would it apply to whatever Cade is?
They don't even know what Cade is. They keep calling him the devil, but that's not what he is. And they don't know that. They don't know what he is.
Cade, who predates Silas, I believe?
Yes, by a couple 100 years, I think.
Wild.
No, more than that, because Silas is turn of the century. And the Sirens and Cade are BC.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
So,
Silas is
maybe
2000.
Centuries. Yeah.
Caroline, this is why you ended up saying vampire blood will cure cancer.
All right. Not too much of my girl, please. She's trying her best. Who else is coming up with solutions here? Not Damon, apparently. Oh, Kate comes after her? Why? Because she's Stefan's girl. Okay. Weird. I'm telling you, this season, it's not worth watching after a certain point, I'll be honest. It's a lot of nonsense. There's some sort of showdown at the Mystic Grill where a bunch of people die and Caroline has to compel a bunch of them to forget what happened because she's called like a happy hour for a bunch of people, I guess, to like drown her own sorrows. I don't know. Matt tries to blame her for some people who are dead and it's like, what did Caroline do? He's like, she's a part of the darkness now as a vampire, this darkness that's always settled over Mystic Falls. And it's like, all right, bitch, I don't care. I would have cared 2 seasons ago.
Matthew Donovan and your weird love the sinner, hate the sin mentality that he has with his vampire friends.
Which I would endorse if he was as consistent in his actions as he is in the things that he says. But alas, I believe at the end of that episode is also when Stefan gets cured of his vampirism. Because he goes to kill Enzo in New York in front of Bonnie. And Bonnie, having just swiped a little bit of Elena's blood from her in her coffin, jabs it into Stefan in self-defense and cures him. And so he's no longer a Ripper, no longer humanity off, no longer a vampire. He's just a guy who has killed a lot of people in the last couple months and now has to go on the run because the feds are after him. So crazy. He gets arrested. So insane.
Now, when you say it like that,
and he uses his one call to call Caroline, who then comes rushing in. This is the point where she compels a bunch of police to erase all the evidence that Stefan has killed a bunch of people. And then around that time, there's this realtor that Stefan accosted to get her to sign Bonnie's house over to him so that he could get in and kill Enzo. This little girl comes into this precinct to lodge a case about her mom who's gone missing, who is the realtor. Stefan now becomes afraid because he's left this girl's mother for dead somewhere. They go looking for her, and it's a lot of discussion about like, well, now Stefan's been cured of vampirism. Aside from all the awfulness that's going on right now about him being like a mass murderer, he's now human. And Caroline's a vampire. And he is human in a way where he can no longer be a vampire again, because once you've taken the cure, vampire blood does not work on you. Not just in the way of turning you into a vampire, even in the way of healing you. He's like, I don't know what our future looks like. Also, I can't just do like wedding stuff and forget the fact that I've killed so many people. I'm laughing because it's awful. I'm laughing because this is a nightmare. Caroline's just doing a lot of reassuring. Bless her heart. She's just like, we'll figure it out. We'll do something. It's fine. They do find this realtor.
I think it's in this episode that we find out that vampire blood can't heal you.
Because the realtor stabs him, of course, because he attacked her. And Caroline tries to heal him, and it doesn't work. So now they have to wait for a paramedic to come fetch him. And it's almost as though Stefan's gonna die in this episode, and he's like, well, I know I'm going to hell.
Truly, being at the mercy of mundane medicine, I guess, is the most terrifying thing that could happen in this show.
To these people, frankly. The paramedics show up, and they sort him out. It's okay. And Caroline tells him, listen, just because it looks bad right now, we do not have to throw this all away. And Stefan's like, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it all right. And Caroline says, me too. But I know where you can start. And I believe she's talking about Bonnie, because in the next episode, Stefan goes to try and apologize to Bonnie. She does slam the door in his face, so, you know, for whatever that's worth.
I mean, obviously, I don't really know what he was expecting.
Yeah, she definitely killed the love of her life, so what are we gonna do? So this is where we learn that being cured of vampirism means all the people you compelled get their memories back. And
nonsense.
I have questions. We've had two people get cured, right? Catherine and Elena. What happened there? Where are the droves of people who are just like...
I guess everyone who was alive that had been compelled by Catherine just...
is dead now? Sure.
Just magically. No, I mean, all the survivors got their memories back. However many... or however few those might have been. I'm trying to think of any characters we know who were compelled by Catherine. Jenna is dead.
I guess it doesn't matter, right, narratively, because there are no present or relevant characters who we would see this effect on.
For Elena, it'd only be April Young, but she knows about the supernatural by the end of season 4.
Yeah.
So...
and also she knows she was compelled, so there's no, like, drama to come back to.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, they make a point this episode of a bunch of people showing up to the police to report that Stefan either tortured them, attacked them, killed their loved ones, made them watch as he killed their loved ones. It's just like, okay, if it's that many people from this couple of weeks that Stefan's been doing this, where are all the people Catherine screwed over? I guess she's more efficient and no one survived to tell the tale.
Also,
I don't know.
If the cure affects vampires the same way it affects immortals, which is meant to be the mechanics of how that cure works, does that mean all the people in Mystic Falls who watched as Silas made Bonnie's father murder himself got their memories back when Silas took the cure?
If so, nobody's brought it up. And shame on all of you, your mayor, a scion of that town, who traveled for insurance purposes. I don't remember. Crazy that y'all never brought it up. Also, I guess that's not related to the cure, because I was like, then why is it when Rick becomes human again, his compulsion doesn't wear off?
Nah,
I guess
he's
it's not
just
the same
he was a little loophole that they immediately said that's never happening again because it was a one-time lucky deal. And I was like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I feel like Elena could have
Fair
been
enough.
resuscitated from drowning. Maybe Caroline too from her suffocation. But sure.
Suffocating. Yeah, just breathe. Actually, now that I think about it, if you're brought back to your dying moments, I think Caroline could just breathe if she wanted to. And frankly, that's probably why they never have her get caught in the radius of the bubble,
Yeah.
right? It's only the people who died violently. Well, she died violently too, but who died in ways where like there'd be no way to come back from it without external intervention. Caroline would just need to breathe. Caroline could actually have been human this whole time, when you think about it. Oh, that's...
The one character who'd never wanted, apparently.
True. Anyways, as I said, a bunch of people come back to be like, I remember this white man doing some shit. And this is the thing too, is that it's not just people from this last couple of weeks when he was a Ripper. Mr. Dorian comes back, new recurring character Dorian, who's like, Stefan Salvatore, in 2010 you killed my father, which is a retcon into the Klaus era, right? This is the time when he was running around with Klaus. Apparently Stefan killed Dorian's dad. That has nothing to do with Caroline. Where's Caroline? Oh, she and Matt are like dealing with the people who have come forward with all these stories. And I believe she's compelling away all of it. And for some of them, they're sending them money, I guess, to like bribe them or compensate them. I'm not sure.
Probably compensation.
It's so bizarre.
I'm like, how much money does the Salvatore state have that you can compensate all of Stefan's victims who are alive?
Also, what price are you putting on the pain and also the death of loved ones? Oof. Like, are you giving somebody $100 when their dad was murdered? That's so messed up. Again, Stefan gets injured in a mundane way, and Caroline shows up to try and heal him, but she can't because the blood don't work. Yeah, they get him to hospital, and then he breaks up with Caroline. So, I don't know, man. I don't know.
What was the obstacle this time? Guilt and mortality?
Yeah, I guess he's just too much of damaged goods, right? And he needs to go start new. He needs to leave town.
Which I'm like, you had already done all these terrible things when you got together with her, and now your emotions are less heightened. I don't know why you're acting like things have changed. Because, I mean, this is the same man who was fully prepared to have a long-term relationship with Elena when she was going to age and die and he wasn't. So I was like, okay, so you can do the same thing on the other side of the calculation now. You can be the mortal person who's just gonna like, live out their life, and Caroline just stays 17 forever.
People are gonna be looking at you funny, boyo. I guess because the hell of it all this season, the sense of consequence has been heightened. They're very concerned about like where they're headed when they're going to die. So like all the things they've done have new weight. And I guess also being confronted directly by it right after he has been turned human, and so many people at once have gotten back their memories, and it's like, here's a full tapestry of the monster that you are. So sure, why not?
I guess. Yeah.
Kai shows up after this, and he's coming after the twins because that's been his whole deal. Nobody can have the Gemini coven by me. A coven of just the twins.
A coven of two!
You know? Great power that he's still desiring.
Or I guess it's the principle of the thing. He's like, there's a reason I stabbed your mother in the abdomen when she was pregnant with you at her wedding. The fact that you survived is an affront to me.
Frankly, I need to close this loop. God damn it. So he comes after them and tries to kill them, but Rick and Caroline are like, no. So they stop him. Oh, also at this point, the twins have started acting out and doing magic. And this is wild to me because the one time that they do it, one of them grabs Caroline and siphons her and then throws an incendiary spell at the other one, which is hilarious. She doesn't get to the end of the spell. Caroline stops her and is like, you don't cast magic at your sister. What are you doing?
I guess the one siphoning Caroline did it like instinctively. I don't know.
Yes. Yes, but they seem to know how to do magic in some way from someone. I don't know. From Celine.
Celine taught them the incendia spell. So.
Yeah. Which
she
also
was like,
is
don't hurt mommy, incendia.
Which also, it's like Celine isn't a witch, but I guess with her hundreds of years, I'm sure she's run into them.
Yeah.
But then Rick suggests that they've been having similar problems off in school, which I'm like, I had assumed they were far away and then now came back. But it seems maybe they were living somewhere near the armory, because later they'll say, or Kai will say, they've been ambiently absorbing energy from the armory. But then also it's like, we learned in season 6 that if a siphon absorbs magic, it does deplete even if you're not using it.
Yep.
So,
which I had pointed out in the Kai episode that didn't make sense to me. I was like, how much does a battery just leak energy when it's not being used?
I thought it was fine because it's like you're using energy that doesn't belong to you. It's very much like, have you ever had that error on your laptop when you plug in a charger and it's like, this AC adapter does not match the power rating of your computer? And it's like the computer will stay on when it's plugged in, but the moment you remove it, it switches off.
Oh, no.
So that's kind of how I think about it.
I've never had that.
So yeah, I didn't really have a big issue with it, but I'm like, it needs to be consistent then. How are they keeping, unless they're leaving the armory directly from there to school, unless they're living at the armory, it doesn't make a lot of sense, you know? How many times would Rick be bringing them in there? Weird. After this, Rick is like, you know what, I'm gonna stick around actually. I need to accept that our kids are magical kids, and maybe a normal school isn't suited for them. Maybe we need a school that is built for the supernatural. Caroline, would you help me start that? And she's like, oh, okay. She's like, I mean, I'm not getting married anymore, so what else have I got going on? And then Stefan comes back that episode and proposes to her again. I don't know what to tell you, man. The season's not great. It really isn't. Finally, we're planning a June wedding. Catherine's back. God, I forgot Catherine has to be contended with. And I hate this too, because they're like, oh, man, how are we gonna take her down now that she's a hell ghost
specter
ruler or whatever?
I guess because now she's immortal, like everyone else who comes out of hell.
Yeah.
She can't really be permanently killed.
And so I think Dorian figures out, because the way they kill Cade is they use his bones to make a dagger and they kill him with that.
It's always
so
some
like,
stabbing weapon in this show. It's always, it's the silver daggers to take down an original. It's stakes for normal vampires, white oak stake for original vampires. It's the traveler knife to get a passenger out of a traveler host.
Yeah, it's that, what was that dagger called? Papatunde's one in
the
original.
Yes.
That dagger was so cool. Ooh, that one was a sacrificial dagger though. But yeah, it does go back to the nature of like sacrifice and like slaughter, but also it goes back to that vampiric like origin of staking people to their coffins so they don't rise up.
Yes.
Yeah, the idea of like piercing and stabbing is very relevant.
Spoilers for Nosferatu. For those of you who haven't watched.
A rod of cold iron.
Yeah, Nicholas Hoult makes a reference to a rod of cold iron, which we don't usually see in vampire stories, but is like a regional belief from that part of the world, depending, I guess, which side of the river you came from. And I'm like, wild that the witches in the TVD universe didn't just make these daggers out of iron, which is,
you know,
less valuable and far more readily available than silver. They could have taken Klaus down centuries ago.
Imagine. God, iron is usually the thing, is even in like fae stories.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you take down fairies, usually with iron.
I think in Secret
it also
Circle
repels them from your home.
Wasn't iron something like iron sulfate or something odd like that? A weakness for the witches in Secret Circle? Which I was like, are we pulling from fairy lore here? Like, what are these witches?
Yeah.
We'll never know.
I mean, it all pours into each other, yeah. Oh, I loved when the hunters showed up and they started using that. What was his name? Isaac? Very, well, I mean, we'll get into that another day, but ooh, I've said too much. So they're like, you know what would lure her out? If we have a wedding for Stefan and Caroline, because we all know Miss Ma'am has always been obsessed with Stefan. She would never miss the opportunity to gate crash that. And it's just like...
Which... I mean, given the last time we saw her, right, where she managed to escape death, get into Elena's body, and instead of leaving town, even if she had no interest in Nadia, she could have still left with Elena's body. They'd never have found her. She knows how to hide. She still was like, no, I need to stay and hijack her actual life so that I can date Stefan through her body. So at least season 5 Catherine is definitely insane enough that this plan would work. I think season 2 Catherine would have been like, okay, this is a bit much. I don't think she cares that much about Stefan.
But the thing is, at this point, she seems to be over him from what we see of her in season 8. She seems to be over both of the Salvatore. She's just like, listen, you know, we had our history, but I'm here to get shit done. So we seem to have looped back. She doesn't show up to the wedding, is the thing. It's the Donovans who show up, I think.
I guess they were wrong then. She's like, nah, I'm finally over you, Stefan.
Yeah.
Burning for eternity will do that to you.
But also it's like, God, we're just doing the Steroline wedding to lure Catherine out. It's like a means to an end. It's not for its own purpose. And it's a small thing, but it's just like, God damn it. Can we let them live? Can we let them have something? They do start preparing the wedding. It is very lovely and sweet. Damon apparently gives Elena's necklace to Caroline because she needs something borrowed. Bonnie gives her a tiara for the something new. And then Stefan gives her a blue necklace for something old and something blue.
Her daylight ring could have been something old and something blue.
Is her daylight ring blue?
Lapis lazuli. It's always blue.
Are they all always lapis lazuli?
Yeah, that's the stone they have to use.
No, for sure. But I was like, maybe they accessorize a little bit. I don't know. I've never actually paid a lot of attention to anyone's daylight ring except for Stefan's and Damon's.
I do, because I don't know, I had a fascination with how different they all were and
That's fair.
The different fingers they were worn on. I don't know why I was focusing on that.
No, you did raise that in the Elena episode, which I thought was interesting, that she wore it on her left ring finger. So it was almost like her becoming a vampire and him giving her that ring was like an engagement.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Bonnie initially was not going to come to the wedding because her boyfriend's dead and the groom at the wedding killed him. But she does eventually show up because it's still her friends. And she walks Caroline to the altar. And then Stefan also comes up to the altar. He's got the Catherine bone dagger with him. And they have the wedding and they dance. So the necklace apparently was not sent by Stefan. It was sent by Catherine. So they're now waiting for her to show up, but she doesn't, and so the marriage goes out without a hitch. Damon apparently officiates. I had the funniest image in my head last night of him really quickly trying to get his officiant's license online before the wedding happened. Just like furiously filling out a test to be like, just gotta get that online certificate.
They always say that.
I don't believe he had that.
They always say that on American TV, and I'm like, if this is such a legal necessity, then why is it so easy to get? It's always like, yeah, by the power vested in me by a sketchy website on the internet. And I'm like, what? And this will hold up in court?
By marriagereusonline.rz. Damn, sanctity of marriage, anyone? I thought that was important to y'all. I keep hearing it from lawmakers. I mean, that is the hypocrisy of it all, right? The like, oh, the sanctity of marriage, straight marriage specifically, and then it's like everyone getting Vegas quickie shame weddings, and it's like, oh, well, interesting. Yeah, this is when Kelly crashes the party and she takes the mic, starts going on about, oh, y'all never cared about me and my family, blah, 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 and Leslie Forbes is a big old bitch. It's like, she's died of cancer, ma'am. I understand you're in hell. But this is crazy. So then she's like, I'm working for Catherine. Gas leak, explosion. Caroline has to run to save Bonnie and her daughters because they get trapped in the house. I think this is the episode where Bonnie has the twins siphon energy from her because Bonnie's psychic now. And they use that to do a spell to channel all the fire and throw it out through the chimney. Oh God, is it already the finale?
Yes.
Wow. Right. Finale is when they ring that bell Vicky's ringing a bell 12 times, 13 times.
Honestly, a death knell for the show.
Honestly, just like, for whom the bell tolls, the Vampire Diaries. So Damon and Matt are trying to stop her. On the other end, everyone else is evacuating. Stefan calls Caroline to tell her he has to go fetch Elena because who else is going to do it? They've put her in the high school for some reason. I don't know, man. I don't know these people's plans. And she and Rick end up packing to like take the twins and Bonnie and leave Mystic Falls. Caroline is like, I'm gonna stay behind and wait for Stefan. And Rick is like, no, you're the mother of my kids. We're leaving, girl. We're getting out of here. We can't have the girls experience what you did when you lost your mother. Do you want them at like 5 years old to now have to go through this loss? And Caroline's like, I know. I'm sorry. I promise I will be right with you guys. She has them leave and get out of town. Damon leaves Matt to stop Vicky. Or Peter Maxwell. One of the Maxwells. Peter Maxwell dies this season. Did you remember that? He dies and then comes back as the hell goes. Yeah. I think, what's her name? Mrs. Donovan.
Kelly.
Kelly slits his throat.
Good Lord. You know what, Kelly?
Maybe
that
someone
man,
heals him.
That
I
man
don't
was
know.
a deadbeat and left you with 2 kids. 2 young kids.
Maybe someone heals him, I'm not sure. But I just saw her slit his throat and I was like, Jesus, I didn't know he died. Damon's now also gone to go find Elena, and they're like, oh, Damon might die in the hellfire and burn with Elena. They go through some underground tunnels. I guess these are the tunnels that they found through the armory. Stefan and Caroline meet up again, and he's like, I need to go talk to Damon because we need to leave, and he won't leave Elena. Why aren't they taking Elena with them? I thought that was the plan.
I think someone has snatched Elena.
Catherine, that's why it's at the school. I was like, why is Elena even at the school? Catherine has placed Elena's body at the school to lure them in. So Damon has gone
Symbolic of how she got to this town beefing with teenagers.
So Stefan has to go convince Damon to leave her behind. And again, just like in season 7, it's this thing of like Stefan always having to come to the rescue of his brother and it impacting him and Caroline's relationship. Because then he has to give her this tearful kiss goodbye and the two of them exchange I love yous and he runs off while Caroline leaves through the tunnels. She meets up with Bonnie and Rick and Bonnie is like, actually, I'm gonna head back because I think I know what to do to save the world. So she goes. Bonnie's apparently just got her magic back now.
How Bonnie got her groove back.
Now, that would have been fun, is having Angela Bassett show up in the show and be related to her.
Marie Laveau.
Enough about American Horror Story. Caroline leaves with her family, and Stefan, as we know, sacrifices himself to save Damon. Caroline calls Stefan and doesn't get through to him because he has gone down into the tunnels to go make the sacrifice. And Caroline leaves a voicemail that's like, I understand you had to make this decision and I love you and I'll always love you forever. And that's that. And I need you to understand how hollow that makes me. I need you to understand that I will never forgive whoever's idea this was. When Elena comes back to life in this episode because she wakes up from a beauty sleep, we had to have it. She tells Caroline, hey, I spoke to Stefan on the astral plane or whatever. And he whispered a little.
Which I'm like, wait,
like, yeah.
You were asleep. You weren't dead and then came back to life. So you passed each other as you were going in opposite directions.
There's no other side. There's only peace. So unless she was in peace, I don't know how they crossed.
She was renting property in peace.
She was in a little celestial city right on the edge of Celestia. Okay. But Stefan told her to tell Caroline that he got her voicemail. So
if I were Caroline, some small part of me would be like, of course Elena was the last person that got to speak to you.
Do you know what? Because that's true. Elena's the last one to speak to Stefan. Caroline doesn't get to say goodbye to him. It's actually insane.
Just a brief flashback to, I try so hard. Elena doesn't even have to try. She was asleep and she got to
asleep and she gets the last goodbye. I hate it. Oh.
And once again, remember last in part 3 when I said, "Oh, the whole Klaus quickie in the woods thing as sort of a final death knell for the Tyra of it all, but also like just a compensation ribbon for the Caroline fans." And I'm like, I don't think anyone was happy about this. Everyone's miserable. Similarly with me as a Stelena diehard. And the Stereline shippers, I'm like, well, they got together in the end and then he died. So everyone's miserable.
Like, at what cost? There is no period in this show longer than a couple weeks where these two are together and happy. The number of shite obstacles they're going through, contrived dramas that they have to deal with, and then just suddenly be apart for like years at a time. And then they get married and then he dies. It's like, who hated them this much? I don't understand. Why do it at all if the ultimate is like...
Nobody wins, as you said, except that one ship.
It's insane.
I mean, I don't take Benzo seriously, but for those of you who did, he dies as well. So.
It's pretty shit that he just dies. When they were doing quite well, honestly, they had less drama to deal with, let me be clear. For as much as for that period where it seemed like, hey, Stereline is doing okay and Benzo's in the water, it's just like, they end up on a pretty good place. They like travel, they see the world, they're like loved up. They spent 3 years together, to be fair, in the 3 years where Stereline were apart. And he also just dies like a chump. And you know who gets to live there happily ever after?
I wonder if maybe there was still some lingering... I mean, this would be wild to imagine, but I can't put anything past the CW. If maybe there was still some lingering thread of the Caroline shippers
together.
Because, like, yeah,
Don't piss me
it
off.
ends with Stefan dead and her effectively widowed and single, and the originals would continue for like another 2 years.
I'm sneaking a bomb into the CW studios. I'm going back in time. Because in the epilogue, right, because they start up Xavier School for the Young and Gifted, they get a huge donation from the Michelson family with a nice little note from Klaus, right? To be like, a noble pursuit, blah, blah, blah. Nothing about Stefan, who's died, right? Their shared love interest. It's just a note to be like, I cannot think of any nobler pursuit. Hopefully the small donation will help in your cause, whatever. Yours forever, Klaus. And it's like, why are you trying to piss me off? Again, as far as I know, they never get together and he kills himself.
Yep.
So unless Legacies tries to piss me off further, this means nothing.
I mean, I think he does get to see Caroline from the originals TV show's perspective in that final season. He brings up how, oh, you wanted to kill me once upon a time. You and your friends worked very hard to try and end me. And she's like, I was just a
we
kid.
were young.
We all were. And I was like, oh, so you acknowledge he was pursuing you when you were a child.
The Klaus PR squad. Almost as strong as the Damon one. They're slacking sometimes, but in that moment, they were working overtime, baby. They cashed those checks.
Imagine if in some timeline she gets with Klaus. Klaus becomes the stepfather to Alaric's children.
God.
Be like, hey kids, this is stepfather Klaus who possessed me once.
Right, tried to kill me twice. Tried to kill your mom twice, rather. There is one nice moment in the epilogue where while she's doing School for the Young and Gifted stuff, Liz from Peace is shown to like gently touch her arm and kind of be watching from beyond. So that's lovely. And yeah, that's really where we leave it for Caroline. Always with these last 2 seasons, with the characters who make it that far, there's often not much to say about them because the last season's not very good. And it's often a rehash of stuff we've touched on before. So, I don't know, there's not necessarily growth in a huge way. It's just a lot of maintenance and dealing with a bunch of shit that nobody wants to deal with and coming out on the other side of that. And apparently being doomed to never be happy, you know?
Yeah. What's the opposite of wrapping things up with a neat little bow? Clumsily tying them together. Quickly writing the conclusion to your essay and hitting send because it's a minute away from the submission deadline. And then you have to cling to these little moments of, well, at least that thread sort of ended nicely. Like,
yeah. At least they got married, right?
At least they got married.
Imagine getting married and widowed in the same week. I swear to God. And you're immortal, so that's just how it is for the rest of your immortal life now.
Married and widowed in the same week. I mean, I guess Marjorie Terrell was married and widowed at her wedding.
So was Alaric Saltzman.
Oh, no! At least Marjorie was widowed at the reception. Alaric was widowed at the altar.
It's insane.
I don't even know if that was legally binding because she was in the middle of her vows. Were they married?
In my heart, they were married. And he refers to her as his wife.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, he does.
So,
he does. There we go.
Leave alone the Caroline aspect of it. How would you have felt if Caroline and Rick got together in the future, years down the line when all the weirdness of the current stuff was done with?
I would have, I assume you've seen the music video for We Can't Be Friends by Ariana Grande.
Why would you assume that?
Okay, well, in that music video, there is a scene where Ariana Grande, or at least the character she's playing, goes to this interesting little sci-fi clinic where they have the ability to erase all memory of your relationship from your mind, or at least I guess you'll know you had a relationship, but they'll erase the person and everything you experienced from your mind.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
This is like heart-wrenching part of the, like, during the process, she stops and asks if she can please just keep this one really happy memory, and they're like, no, it has to be the whole thing. Anyway, I would have gone to find those people and erased the entirety of Vampire Diaries from my mind if that was the end of Caroline's story.
I was like, where's this going? Oh my
And maybe I would have been like, Caroline, please can I keep this one thing? And they would have said no, and I would have been like, it's fine, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I guess that's also another question, is like, of her varied love interest. No, the answer's obvious. It's Tyler.
Yes.
Even though the show would say otherwise, because the show is very intent that, like, that was her worst relationship, right? But it's like, objectively, Tyler was her best and longest relationship.
You know, it's like Matt, the uninteresting one, Tyler, the messy one, Klaus, the forbidden
leave the
love.
Uninteresting whatever, because I don't want to entertain that. I like Matt. Is the
No, I'm saying
Matt.
that's what the show would have you believe. It would have you believe that the Matt
Sure.
relationship doesn't matter, especially because it was largely founded in the pre-vampire years of Caroline's life. The Tyler one would be the messy one. The Klaus is the forbidden love, not meant to be. And then Stefan is endgame until they kill him the next episode.
So it's like, babes, that's not what endgame means. What are we doing? I don't know.
But yeah, from my side, obviously, Tyler, I'm surprised that I'm always surprised that you are willing to be like, listen, love Steroline, but Tyler was her best partner.
Because look at this shit. How is this better? I love them both. I love them together. They suffer start to finish. At least Tyroline has like good stretches where they're like together, strong, and happy. I'm not gonna act. The one thing I will not do on this podcast is act. Thank you very much. The Matt situation, it's like, that one comes close, but as you say, the minute she was turned into a vampire, it kind of screwed them up because she had to keep the secret from him. She was learning how to control herself around him. She had to stay away from him. And that ultimately eroded it, even though it might have gotten together down the line.
And then once he found out, he was like, yeah, girl, I work an after-school job. My mom is gone. My sister's dead. I never knew my dad. I don't have time for supernatural love interests. Sorry.
Right. She and Tyler start vibing in the middle of season 2, officially become a relationship at the beginning of season 3, and are together until episode 5 of season 5. They're objectively the longest relationship she's had in the show, and most of that relationship was with them together. There were 2 periods where he had to leave for like a month or 2. But other than that...
And even then, when he left, they weren't broken up because that's why
they were together.
The whole Haley bait and switch is like, did he cheat while he was away? Meaning that, yeah, they were very much together while he was out of town.
Right. So if it hadn't been all of this shit that I just recounted, Steroline might have, like, all signs point to Steroline, for whether you like it or not, in some ways eclipsing the Tyroline ship. But it never can, because they do a 3-year time jump where Stefan has left her, and she now has kids with another guy. And then he's dead.
I was gonna joke that maybe if the show had been able to eke out more seasons, you would have gotten more Steroline. But no, they would have just made more obstacles for them so that they couldn't be together.
I don't understand why collectively they just did not want this pair to survive. I don't know. And you know what? It's very possible, because I have thoughts on Stefan's death that I've mentioned before. I'm like, I'm saving this for a Stefan episode, where it's just like, maybe Steroline was collateral damage in that last moment where the death ends their relationship, and that was more to do with Stefan. But Steroline does not have a good time most of the time they're together. It sucks.
Yeah, even as someone who didn't want it to be Endgame, once I realized it was Endgame, I was like, it's fine. I'm settling. I'm settling for Steroline.
Settle for
And then to
me.
have it yanked out from under my feet, I was like, so why did you put me through all this?
What was the point? What was the reason?
I learned to be okay with this, only for you to tell me it didn't matter in the end.
God, yeah, it's gonna be Tyraline. I've honestly come to have, I said this in the Tyler episode as well, where it's like, before I did this podcast, I could have taken Olive and Tyler. Actually, like, analyzing the show has given me a new appreciation for that character and that relationship.
Yes, Vampire Diaries animated reboot, where we fix all these problems.
Listen, we've promised a number of fanfics on this show, so I guess we need to get writing. I'm doing my Damon Fix It, you're gonna do the Tyraline Truth of fanfic.
I'll do it too. I like we always say, it's that season 3 ending where we just need to start from there and then fix.
Take a different trajectory.
Yeah.
Just tweak some things a little bit, and I think you can still have more of the, like, big beats. It's just very small choices that it's just like, babes. Pull the Augustine stuff earlier, do away with the Sire Bond, put Bonnie and Enzo in the prison world rather than Bonnie and Damon.
Maybe send off the Michelsons a bit sooner.
Yeah, because honestly, in season 4, they're just like, there's a reason they did a spin-off, right? Because they were like, we want to keep these characters, we have nothing for them to do. Truly. And then, yeah, I don't know. We said a bunch of stuff in the Enzo episode, I think, about like, how would we shift this whole thing from season 4 going onwards? So go back to that. We had some good ideas. I guess, that's all I've got. Candace King, we don't do the post-mortem on actors anymore, but like, Candace King I've had on the mind this week. I've been thinking about her actor journey. She was in that After sequel.
And then got replaced by Lexi's actress.
Ariel Kebble.
Which I was like, the Lexi and Caroline thread continues.
Always. The blondies, tagging out for the blondies. Interestingly, she does not feature for most of Legacies, as I understand it, even though the implication was she and Rick were starting the school together. Rick is really the one, like, headmaster/teacher at the school. I think there's a few other teachers, but it's really just him.
Dorian is there.
Dorian's there.
There's this woman with a British accent who I think is in charge of the younger students. Yeah, but Caroline is like out of the country doing research.
I've got spoilers for Legacies a little bit, but the implication is that she's doing research so that the twins who are now 16 don't have to merge. Have you gotten to a point in Legacies where they explain why they need to?
I haven't. I am still like in the middle of season 1. I need to pick it up again. Because when I started, it was boring, and then it got slightly interesting, and then it got boring again.
Yeah, I hear that's about how it goes season 1 to 4. Which is why I fell off within 5 episodes, because I was like, this show is not hooking me. Also, some of the characters are so annoying, and I did not care for them.
There was because I mean, before I started it, I know we had already discussed how we'd heard through the grapevine that the show finally expands the supernatural world of the TVD universe.
Yes.
They do it in an interesting way that I'm like, okay, I would like to see where this leads. I don't know how it ends, but I'm like, okay, this is a sort of interesting explanation that we're going with.
But yeah, she's not in that, presumably because, again, she had just had a child. I think she then had another child after that. I'm sure she had, like, obligations she wanted to fulfill rather than locking into another, assumedly multi-season show,
Also, I guess she's not supposed to be aging, and now her daughters would physically be like a year younger than her.
That's the other crazy thing too. Yeah, she's theoretically still 17 physically. But I hear she comes back at some point for like 1 or 2 appearances. So that's nice.
Okay. Willing suspension of disbelief.
But yeah, that's all she wrote on Caroline Forbes. Any final thoughts?
I think I've said all I can say about her. Love this character. resonate with her in some ways. In many ways, she accomplishes things I never could because I am not a type A person. I am not on top of everything and good at organizing and planning and overachieving. But I do very much resonate with the journey that she takes as she, grows up, transforms, finds that maybe your insecurity is rooted in the fact that you are, what is that thing? You're judging a fish, yourself being the fish, by its ability to climb a tree.
Climb a tree. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, babe, different journeys, different paths. As Stefan says, different circumstances, different results. She remains in my top 3, even though my ranking of these characters has shifted since doing the show. My top 3 remains the same, and she's in it.
Oh, who's number 1?
I cannot choose between my triplet children, my 3 identical children.
And honestly, that's what Vampire Diaries is all about. Having a lot of options and not being able to choose.
On that note, thank you so much for sticking with us through this fairly long Caroline episode. It is a 4-parter, much like Elena's, but hopefully you've enjoyed it at least half of the way through. I know this one's probably a rough one to end on, but sadly, the show is the show, and we are but your humble guides. Stay hyped, stay excited. We'll have another episode for you in 2 weeks. Until then, if you have any questions, thoughts, or just want to say hi, you can send those to us at animalattackpod@gmail.com. You can also tweet us at animattackpod. That's at ANIM Attack Pod. You'll find a link tree in our bio that has all our online stuff. From us, it's goodbye, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers!
Bye!